Chapter 353. Senior Sister, I want to challenge him. In the silent atmosphere, the reprimanded cultivator suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Lu Yi, who was chewing on a spirit pill, his cheeks bulging. Are you his opponent? Whether I'm his opponent or not, we'll know after we fight. The cultivator straightened his neck. Feng Yuchan's lips curled slightly. If you want to challenge him, you'll have to see if he's willing. Saying so, she lowered her head and looked at Lu Yi. Their eyes met, and Lu Yi raised his brows slightly, revealing a look of inquiry. Feng Yuchan nodded imperceptibly. The silent exchange was completed in a moment, and Lu Yi suddenly realized that this senior sister Feng was also a clever person. She obviously knew the real reason why he came to Pill Heart's sect and made such a scene. Sure. Lu Yi nodded. Feng Yuchan turned to a female cultivator standing to the side, help him treat his injuries. This female cultivator should be a medical cultivator, and her cultivation wasn't low, at least at the 8th heaven level. No need. Lu Yi said as he tore off his tattered shirt and wiped the blood off his body. Throwing the bloody clothes aside, he raised the mountain ascending saber in his hand and pointed at the cultivator who wanted to challenge him. Come. The cultivator roared angrily as his spirit chi surged. First, he attacked with an imperial artifact. Following the imperial artifact, he arrived in front of Lu Yi in a few steps and thrust his spear straight at him. He had seen Lu Ye's various methods just now and knew that he was definitely not his opponent, so he attacked with all his strength. Gathering his spirit chi on the spear, he shook it 3 times and blossomed in Lu Ye's vision, accompanied by the murderous intent of the imperial artifact. 2 crisp sounds rang out as the imperial artifact and the spear flew up at the same time, together with the cultivator's figure. Both of them were 7th-order heaven-grade cultivators, but this cultivator couldn't even take a single blow from Lu Yi. The moment his spear flew out of his hand, the web between his thumb and forefinger split open and blood spilled out. His falling body was caught by his senior brother. His arms trembled violently as he looked at Lu Yi with eyes full of disbelief. He knew that he was no match for Lu Yi, but he didn't expect to be defeated so thoroughly. If Lu Yi really wanted to take his life, he would have died just now. Next. Lu Yi said indifferently as he twirled the long saber in his hand. The cultivators of Elixir Heart's sect were in an uproar. Hearing the meaning in Lu Ye's words, he clearly wanted to challenge all of them with his strength alone. What kind of arrogance was this? Compared to the failure they had suffered when they had joined forces to besiege the Blue Blood sect disciples, Lu Ye's arrogance was even more intolerable. Let me. This time, without waiting for Feng Yuchan to speak, a cultivator jumped out. However, as soon as he steadied himself, his vision blurred and Lu Ye's face appeared in front of him, almost touching his face. The man jumped in fright. Just as he was about to pull away, a strong force hit his lower abdomen. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. He flew back in the same way he had jumped out, crashing heavily into the crowd. Lu Yi retracted his foot and stood on the spot expressionlessly. The group of Elixir Heart sect cultivators opposite him gnashed their teeth in hatred. Tian Qi, Tian Ba, don't make a fool of yourself. Tian Jiu, go. Feng Yuchan's voice rang out. A burly physique cultivator pushed through the crowd and slowly walked up to Lu Yi, standing not far from him. With a dignified expression, he took out a shield spirit artifact from his storage bag and activated his spirit energy. The small shield in his hand suddenly expanded, turning into a barrier that covered his entire body. Soon after, the body cultivator lowered his body slightly and assumed a charging posture. His feet exerted force on the ground and his body shot toward Lu Yi like an arrow released from a bow. Lu Yi took a deep breath. The moment the body cultivator closed in, the mountain plate saber ignited with flames and he slashed 3 times at the spirit tool shield. With each slash, the mountain plate saber flashed with light. After 3 slashes, the spirit tool shield's spirit light immediately dimmed and cracks appeared on the small shield in the body cultivator's hand. The moment they collided, Lu Yi couldn't help but retreat. His feet plowed 2 deep grooves in the ground. The body cultivator's forward momentum was stopped at the same time. In that instant, he felt as if he had crashed into a wall. He was shocked. His opponent's physique was actually on par with his own. What kind of weapon cultivator was this? Before he could finish his thought, Lu Yi, who had been forced back, rushed forward again. The mountain plate saber stabbed straight at the small shield spirit tool in his hand. The body cultivator wanted to dodge, but his reaction wasn't fast enough. He could only madly circulate his spirit power and block the attack with his spirit tool. Asterisk crash, asterisk under everyone's shocked gazes, the small shield spirit tool shattered. The mountain plate saber stabbed straight into the body cultivator's chest, sinking 3 inches into his flesh. The body cultivator lowered his head and looked at the mountain plate saber wrapped in flames. His eyes trembled violently. Lu Yi withdrew his saber, bringing with it a spray of hot blood. The body cultivator staggered back. A medical cultivator hurriedly supported him. The body cultivator shook his head, indicating that he was fine. If Lu Ye's saber had been an inch deeper, it would have pierced his heart. This kind of injury was nothing to a body cultivator. The entire arena was silent. Although they knew that Lu Yi was strong when they surrounded him, they never imagined that he would be this strong. The best way for a weapon cultivator to deal with a body cultivator was to put some distance between them and use a spirit tool. This was because a weapon cultivator's physique couldn't compare to a body cultivator's. But what had they just seen? A weapon cultivator had forcibly shattered a body cultivator's defensive spirit tool. A body cultivator's defensive spirit tool was a body cultivator's dignity. Now, that dignity had been shattered and trampled on. The visual impact of this battle was unimaginable to everyone. After a short silence, another Heaven Rank 9 cultivator walked out. He lowered his head slightly and held a long sword in his hand. Judging from his attire, he was a weapon cultivator. Whether or not he was a sword cultivator was unknown. Not all sword cultivators were sword cultivators. This person didn't say a word, but he moved faster and faster. After a few steps, his body was like a bolt of lightning. When the sword light surged, this person's body was wrapped in sword light. Man and sword became one, turning into a sword light that pierced towards Lu Yi. Although this sword didn't look too fancy, it was a real attack that risked one's life. The killing intent was so sharp that it was almost tangible. It made Lu Yi feel as if his entire body was being pierced by needles. This person was a genuine sword cultivator. The sword light arrived in the blink of an eye. Insight spirit marks appeared in Lu Ye's eyes. At the same time, a sturdy defensive spirit mark appeared in front of him. Ding, a soft sound rang out. The long sword touched the defensive spirit mark, followed by a continuous clang. In that instant, the sword cultivator had stabbed countless times. Even though Lu Yi tried his best to urge his spirit power to maintain the defensive spirit mark, the spirit mark was covered in cracks. With a crash, the defensive spirit mark shattered. As the sword light swept past Lu Yi slashed down with his saber. The two figures stood with their backs to each other, motionless. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. With a hiss, blood spurted out of Lu Ye's neck. There was another wound on the side of his neck. Behind him, the sword cultivator swayed slightly and fell to the ground with a plop. The medical cultivator of Pill Heart sect hurried forward to check. He was relieved to find that the sword cultivator had only exhausted his strength. Although he was injured, his life wasn't in danger. The surrounding Pill Heart sect cultivators looked at Lu Yi with mixed feelings. If they were angry before, they were now filled with a hint of admiration. Regardless of the relationship between Jade Blood sect and Pill Heart sect, or whether Lu Yi was from Jade Blood sect, a Heaven Rank 7 cultivator could do this. It was enough to win everyone's admiration. After all, the two Heaven Rank 9 cultivators were the strongest among Pill Heart sect's Spirit Stream Realm cultivators besides Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have found it hard to believe that they were no match for Lu Yi. Looking at the bloodied youth with a saber in his hand, the Pill Heart sect cultivators felt like they were looking at a rising star. Another person walked out of the crowd silently. Although they admired Lu Yi and knew that the battle was unfair, today's battle concerned Pill Heart sect's reputation. They wouldn't be satisfied if they didn't defeat Lu Yi. Enough. Feng Yuechan said faintly. Haven't you embarrassed yourselves enough? The cultivator who walked out was silent for a moment, then retreated into the crowd. Go back and reflect on yourselves. The sect has provided you with a lot of resources. You should be worthy of the sect's efforts. The group of cultivators bowed to Feng Yuechan in silence, then dispersed with heavy hearts. Before this, they were proud of being Pill Heart sect cultivators. Although Pill Heart sect was a rank 2 sect, even Myriad Demon Ridge's rank 1 cultivators didn't dare to provoke them in the Spirit Stream battlefield. This was something that no second-grade sect could do. However, today, they had suffered a huge blow. A Heaven rank 7 cultivator from Jade Blood sect had almost beaten up their Heaven rank 9 cultivators. Jade Blood sect was only a rank 9 sect. This was a humiliation that everyone would remember. If they wanted to wash away this humiliation, they had to work hard and fight back. After the Pill Heart sect cultivators dispersed, Feng Yuechan floated down. Senior Sister Feng. Lu Yi sheathed his saber and bowed. Heal your wounds first, then change into clean clothes. I'll take you to see your 4th senior brother. All right. It was indeed unsuitable for him to meet people in his current state. Moreover, although he seemed to have taken the sword cultivator's attack easily, he had actually taken a trip to the gates of hell. The sword cultivator had concentrated all his strength into one strike. After that strike, he had collapsed from exhaustion. This was clearly a secret technique. How could such a strike be taken so casually? Lu Ye's qi and blood were roiling in his chest. His spirit power was surging and wouldn't be able to calm down in a short time. If another Heaven rank 9 cultivator came to challenge him, he would lose without a doubt. Feng Yuechan must have seen this, which was why she stopped the 3rd Heaven rank 9 cultivator from challenging him. She wanted to use Lu Ye's strength to teach her own cultivator a lesson. She wouldn't let him lose here. Feng Yuechan took him to her residence. She arranged for him to take a bath. Feng Yu also treated him, and the wound on his neck disappeared. After changing into clean clothes, he went to Eagle Beak Cliff behind Pill Heart sect's encampment to see Li Baxien. The environment here was quiet and remote. A simple wooden house was Li Baxian's daily residence. It was far away from the bustle of the encampment and seemed detached from the outside world. When Lu Yi and the others arrived, smoke rose in spirals and a fragrant aroma filled the air. Li Baxien walked out of the kitchen wearing an apron, stunning Lu Yi. 4th senior brother, you, Li Baxien said, you can't tell 2nd senior sister. Otherwise, I won't be able to get a free meal the next time I return to the sect. He then beckoned everyone, sit anywhere you like. It'll be ready soon. Chapter 354. A moment later, everyone sat down in front of a huge wooden pile. The wooden pile was smooth and flat, perfect for a table. There was a dazzling array of dishes on the table, which could be said to be delicious. Zhu Jia did not stand on ceremony and was already eating. Lu Yi tasted a few mouthfuls and raised his eyebrows, saying in surprise, senior brother's cooking is not worse than 2nd senior sister's. Li Baxien smiled, I don't have much to do, so I've been thinking about how to make some food. Feng Yuechan snorted, senior brother is the most mischievous, it's not easy to eat his food. Today, it's all thanks to junior brother Lu. Little junior brother is here, it's not good to expose me. Li Baxien picked up some food for Feng Yuechan. Thank you, senior brother. Feng Yuechan smiled. Li Baxien sighed and was too lazy to correct her. He turned to Lu Yi, how are your injuries? It's nothing serious. Senior sister Feng should have informed the senior brothers of Pill Heart sect in advance. Then drink with senior brother. Li Baxian said and took out a few jars of wine from his storage bag. At the table, no one spoke much. Only Li Baxian and Lu Yi chatted casually. After a full meal, Zhu Jia sat there in a daze while rubbing his belly. Feng Yuechan brought Yi and Feng Yu to clean up. On the protruding cliff of Eagle Beak Cliff, Li Baxian and Lu Yi each held a wine jar, one standing and one sitting, facing the afterglow of the setting sun. Little junior brother is now in the inner circle. What are your plans? I'm going to the Third Sacred Academy. Third Sacred Academy? Sect Master snatched 50 disciples from the Third Sacred Academy, and then the Sect Master of the Third Sacred Academy chased him to our sect. The two of them even fought. Lu Yi briefly explained the matter. When Li Baxian heard this, the corners of his eyes couldn't help twitching. The old man is really going all out. If he does this, wouldn't his reputation be ruined? It seems he really wants to develop the Blue Blood sect. The compensation from Myriad Demon Ridge has also arrived. You don't have to worry about the cultivation expenses of the disciples. As long as there are enough talents, the sect will become better and better. Senior brother, have you thought of returning? Li Baxian smiled. What did you hear? I feel unjust on behalf of senior brother. Li Baxian patted Lu Ye's shoulder and sat down beside him. There's no such thing as fairness in this world, and everything you've heard is what second senior sister has told you. Second senior sister is considering things from my point of view, so naturally she can only see how others treat me badly. He gulped down a mouthful of wine and said leisurely, let's not talk about anything else. Just based on the fact that Pill Heart sect was willing to take me in back then, I can't burn the bridge after crossing the river. It's a disgrace to my name. Of course, the present Elixir Heart sect is different from the past, but that has nothing to do with me. I just need to be myself. Senior brother, is the battle where your spiritual cavities were broken related to Pill Heart sect? I've looked into it over the years, but there's no direct connection. That battle was mainly because I wasn't careful enough, and I was too young and arrogant at that time. I thought that if there were 10 cultivators in the world, Li Baxian had 11, and the others still owed me 1, even with Lu Ye's temperament, he couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. He almost spat out the wine in his mouth. I've learned from my mistakes. I hope junior brother can be more careful. Lu Yi nodded solemnly. I'll remember. The cultivation world is a place where geniuses emerge in large numbers. Don't ever think that you are invincible. Eldest senior brother was so shockingly talented, but in the end, didn't he still end up dead? I only pity eldest sister-in-law and little girl Yuechan. Our eldest senior sister is a good woman. You'll get to meet her in the future. No, I'm saying that eldest sister-in-law knows that senior martial sister Feng is. Lu Yi clenched his fists in front of his face and raised his thumbs. Then, he bent his thumbs slightly and winked at Li Baxian. Eldest senior sister has been very kind to me. She even raised me. So senior brother and senior sister Feng are childhood sweethearts. Li Baxian was speechless. Suddenly, he slapped his thigh. I know. What? I know why Third Sacred Academy wants you to go to their base. Why? Lu Yi couldn't figure it out. In his opinion, since Third Sacred Academy wasn't in a good situation, they should find a way to improve their situation. Asking him to help was like adding fuel to the fire. It would only worsen their situation. Li Baxian smiled. You'll know when you get there. I just don't know if they'll still dare to accept you then. Lu Yi was confused by what he heard. Night slowly fell. Feng Yuechan brought Yi over with many fresh spiritual fruits. They were all grown by Alchemy Heart sect. The two of them ate spirit fruits and drank fine wine, chatting under the moonlight about everything under the sky. The sun rose from the east. A new day had arrived. Bathed in the morning light, Li Baxian threw down the empty wine jar and said in high spirits, "Junior brother, I'll wait for you at the Cloud River battlefield." Lu Yi let out a long breath. He had achieved his goal of coming to Alchemy Heart Sect. He stood up and said, "Senior brother, you have to run faster. Maybe I'll catch up with you soon. Then you have to work hard." The two looked at each other and smiled. Moments later, outside Alchemy Heart Sect's base, Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan saw him off personally. Lu Yi took out his spirit boat and soared into the sky with giant armor and Feng Yu. Li Baxian only looked away when the flying light disappeared from his sight. "Yuechan, I'm going out." "Where are you going, senior brother?" "Wild Saber Sect. Some grudges should be settled." Sword Light soared into the sky and swept in another direction. While flying, Lu Yi received a message from Feng Yuechan. "Junior brother Lu, thank you." Lu Yi smiled and didn't reply. Lu Yi's figure flashed and landed in front of Lu Yi. She asked curiously, "What are we doing in Pill Heart Sect's encampment?" "To see fourth senior brother." "No." Yi shook her head. "Fourth senior brother just returned to the sect a month ago. Besides, if you're really here to see him, why did you fight with the cultivators of Alchemy Heart Sect and make things so tense? You must have a motive." Behind Lu Yi, Feng Yu's ears perked up. She also felt that Lu Yi had a motive for coming to Alchemy Heart Sect, but she couldn't figure it out. "Then what do you think I'm here for?" Lu Yi asked. Yi tilted her head. "I just can't figure it out. That's why I'm asking you." Lu Yi pondered for a moment and said, "Fourth senior brother's spirit apertures have been repaired long ago. He can advance to the Cloud River realm, but he hasn't done so yet. Didn't you say that he needs some time to adapt? What does it take to repair the spirit apertures? Besides, fourth senior brother has been in the spirit stream realm for more than 10 years. He doesn't need to wait any longer. He's not advancing because he's worried about me." The Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi was now a thorn in the side of the major factions in Myriad Demon Ridge. With his strength, he could be said to be invincible in the inner circle. No one in the outer circle could deal with him. However, Lu Yi would eventually enter the core circle. In the core circle, there were countless cultivators who had switched to heaven-grade cultivation methods. Once news of him entering the core circle spread, he would definitely be targeted. Li Baxian didn't advance to the Cloud River realm because he was worried that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to deal with such a situation. Therefore, he wanted to stay in the Spirit Stream battlefield to be a solid backing for Lu Yi. Lu Yi had already guessed this when he sent a message to fourth senior brother asking when he would advance to the Cloud River realm. Therefore, he had specially made a trip to Alchemy Heart Sect's encampment to persuade fourth senior brother in front of him. However, Lu Yi hadn't expected to be rejected by Alchemy Heart Sect's cultivators when he arrived at their encampment. Actions spoke louder than words. Since Alchemy Heart Sect's cultivators had treated him with malice, he had taken advantage of the situation to fight and display his strength. Feng Yuechan's interference allowed his plan to proceed smoothly. With Tian Qi's cultivation base, he was able to defeat several Heaven Rank 9 cultivators. With such a display of strength, he believed that fourth senior apprentice brother would be able to leave the Spirit Stream battlefield in peace. After listening to Lu Ye's explanation, Yi suddenly understood. "I didn't hear you mention it when we were at fourth senior brother's place. Some things don't need to be said too clearly." When Li Baxian said, "I'll wait for you at the Cloud River battlefield," Lu Yi knew that he had made a decision. That Feng Yu, who was standing not far behind Lu Yi, suddenly called out softly, "I wanted to say that there were a few streaks of light following us. Are we being targeted?" Lu Yi glanced around coldly and found that there were indeed a few streaks of light following them from a distance. Lu Yi immediately changed direction and went in their direction. When the streaks of light saw this, not only did they not avoid him, they even went in his direction. As the distance between them narrowed, one of them shouted excitedly, "It really is sect-destroying Yi." The inner circle's humiliation had made the myriad Devil Ridge's side so depressed that they almost exploded. They had been waiting for this day, waiting for Lu Yi to enter the core circle, and then they would teach him a lesson. No one had expected that this day would come so quickly. Lu Ye's life was now worth a lot in the myriad Devil Ridge. Many of the myriad Devil Ridge's top sects had already spread the word that anyone who could kill Lu Yi would receive a lifetime of wealth. That was why these people were so excited after confirming Lu Ye's identity. However, just as that person shouted, he was shocked to find that several streaks of light from Imperial flying weapons were shooting toward him. Even though he tried his best to dodge, he still could not avoid them. The streaks of light flashed through like lightning, bringing with them a spray of hot blood. The myriad Devil Ridge cultivator immediately died, his head falling to the ground. Yi flew out and swiped at the man's waist, taking his storage pouch and putting away his flying spirit artifact. When he looked up again, the sky looked like it was raining blood. The few myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had followed him had all died on the spot. The last myriad Devil Ridge cultivator who had been killed had died with his eyes wide open. He had never thought that with his Heaven Level 8 cultivation, he would not be able to block the might of the sect exterminating Leaf's Imperial artifact. He had died so mysteriously. Chapter 355. Lu Ye's actions in the inner circle were more about leading the Grand Sky Alliance army to fight everywhere. That was the overall strength of the various sects, which greatly weakened Lu Ye's own strength. In other words, it didn't matter who had such an army under his command. This caused many people from the myriad Devil Ridge to greatly underestimate Lu Ye's strength. This was also the reason why those cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge who were at the 7th or 8th level of the myriad Devil Ridge excitedly greeted Lu Yi when they discovered him. On the same day, the news that the exterminating Leaf had entered the core region spread like wildfire. The myriad Demon's Ridge was both shocked and furious. What surprised him was that this fellow's cultivation had increased so quickly. Since he dared to enter the core region, he must have already switched to a Heaven Tier cultivation method. His cultivation must have already reached the Heaven Tier 7 level. What made him angry was that it had only been a month since the peace talks between the Divine Sea Realm cultivators of the two camps. Not long after the myriad Demon's Ridge had sent the compensation, this sect destroyer Leaf jumped out again. It was as if he was burning the bridge after crossing the river. When this guy was in the outer circle, he had caused a great battle at the Golden Light Summit, which attracted the attention of the world. It was said that the two myriad Devil Ridge garrisons next to the Jade Blood sect in the outer circle had also suffered great losses and had not been rebuilt until now. It was even worse when he entered the inner circle. More than 100 or 200 forces from the 10,000 Devil Ridge had their bases destroyed directly or indirectly because of him. In the end, they even forced the 10,000 Devil Ridge to compensate for their resources. They even threatened the Grand Sky Alliance that they would fight to the death if they didn't stop. Their losses were so great that it was unprecedented. Until today, the turmoil in the inner circle had not completely ended. The Grand Heaven Alliance sects that had the advantage in certain areas were frantically suppressing the myriad Devil Ridge forces, making it extremely difficult for the myriad Devil Ridge to rebuild their encampment. Now that this jinx had entered the core region, who knew what kind of storm he was going to stir up? The only thing that myriad Demon's Ridge wasn't worried about was that sect exterminating Leaf would create a Grand Sky Alliance army in the core circle. The situation between the inner circle and the core circle was not quite the same. Not to mention the distance between the sect's encampments, there was also a huge gap between the cultivators' cultivations. Among the cultivators in the core circle, there were some courageous ordinary 9th order cultivators, but most of them had switched to heaven grade secret arts. Whether it was mobility or strength, they were much stronger than the cultivators in the inner circle, so it would be easier for them to provide support. Therefore, it was unrealistic for Sect Destroyer Leaf to imitate the actions of the inner circle. Moreover, the number of cultivators in the core circle was limited. There were at most 200 to 300 cultivators, and at least 100 to 200 cultivators. For example, the North Profound Sword sect, which was a pure sword cultivator sect, only had a few dozen cultivators. How could they have the extra strength to follow Lu Yi to form the Grand Heaven Alliance army? Although he was not worried that Lu Yi would imitate what he had done in the inner circle, he still had to be on guard. This sect-destroying Yi had done many shocking things, and no one knew what other tricks he had up his sleeve. Therefore, when news of him entering the inner circle spread, many myriad demon-rich factions in the inner circle took action. One by one, the myriad demon-rich cultivators left their encampments and rushed to where Lu Yi had appeared. Although no one was in charge, the myriad demon-rich cultivators had silently reached a consensus. No matter what, they had to kill this sect-destroyer Yi in the core circle. They could not allow him to continue growing. Just as the news of Lu Yi entering the core circle spread like wildfire, another piece of news came out. Li Baxian, ranked 3rd on the Spirit Stream list, challenged Yan Xing outside the Wild Blade sect's encampment. The grudges between these two had been going on for more than 10 years. Anyone who was not ignorant of the news in the Spirit Stream battlefield had heard about it. In the past, it was Yan Xing who hid in the Pill Heart sect's encampment to ambush Li Baxian. Unfortunately, he rarely saw Li Baxian go out. This time, it was Li Baxian who took the initiative to challenge him, which was really puzzling. The result of the battle was even more unbelievable. Yan Xing died, and Li Baxian was injured. According to the Wild Blade sect's disciples who watched the battle that day, the battle between the two was decided in one move. It was so fast that the onlookers did not even have time to react. With this battle, Li Baxian returned to the top of the Spirit Stream list. When the news spread, the Spirit Stream battlefield and the 9 provinces were shaken. Li Baxian was the first expert in history to enter the Spirit Stream list with the cultivation of Heaven 8. Moreover, he was ranked at the top, so he naturally attracted a lot of attention. If not for the fact that his spiritual cavities could not be repaired, his future would be limitless. Such an expert had been stagnant in the Spirit Stream stage for more than 10 years because of his broken spiritual cavities, which made many people in the Grand Heaven Alliance feel pity. Until today, the pace that had been stagnant for more than 10 years finally began to move forward. Li Baxian's broken spiritual cavities had been completely repaired. Not only did he cut down the powerful enemy that had troubled him for more than 10 years, he also returned to the top of the Spirit Stream list. There was news that before Li Baxian challenged Yan Xing, the sect Exterminating Leaf had paid a visit to the Pill Heart sect. Coupled with the fact that this guy had destroyed more than 100 myriad Devil Ridge's bases in the inner circle and plundered countless blessings, it was obvious that the sect Exterminating Leaf had spent a huge amount of merit points to buy the supplement elixir that Li Baxian had used to repair his spiritual cavities. Otherwise, who could afford one supplement elixir that cost 150,000 merit points? Now, it was no longer 150,000 merit points. Because the quantity of supplement elixir had decreased, the price had become 160,000 merit points. The Tianji treasury vividly demonstrated the saying that the rarer something is, the greater its value. One day later, Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan's names both disappeared from the Spirit Stream list. The whole world celebrated. For a long time, Feng Yuechan, Yan Xing, and Li Baxian had been the 3 malignant tumors of the Spirit Stream list. The 3 of them had been in the Spirit Stream tier for more than 10 years, occupying the top 3 positions of the Spirit Stream list all year round. No matter how outstanding the latecomers' talent was, they could never surpass the 3 of them. Previously, when Li Baxian had concealed his strength, it had been fine. No one had placed any hopes on the 1st or 2nd rank, but if he worked hard, he could still reach the 3rd rank. But after Li Baxian revealed his strength in the Battle of Golden Light Peak, the 3rd rank had become an extravagant hope. Moreover, these 3 malignant tumors had all been stuck in the Spirit Stream tier because of Li Baxian. Now, Yan Xing had been killed, and Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan had both advanced to the Cloud River tier. The 3 malignant tumors that had suppressed the Spirit Stream list had all disappeared. Many of the Grand Heaven Alliance's sects were grateful to Lu Yi from the bottom of their hearts. They all felt that he had saved the Spirit Stream list. Even the myriad Devil Ridge's forces that were currently targeting him felt that the sect exterminating Leaf had done a rare good deed. There was no need for gratitude. Right now, the myriad Devil Ridge wanted nothing more than to tear Lu Yi to shreds. How could they be grateful? A streak of light streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning. Behind the streak of light, there were dozens of figures using various types of flying spirit tools in hot pursuit. There were even people who were loudly cursing as they chased. It had been 2 days since Lu Ye's whereabouts had been exposed. During these 2 days, they had barely stopped to rest. They had been constantly fleeing. They had no choice but to flee. The myriad Devil Ridge's forces had already formed a joint force. No matter where they went, the myriad Devil Ridge would be able to accurately track them. Some people had been shaken off, and many myriad Devil Ridge cultivators had been killed. However, this did not stop the myriad Devil Ridge's determination to kill him. A steady stream of people had joined the pursuit. The entire core region was now like a pot of hot oil that had been sprinkled with salt. Wherever Lu Yi went, the place would begin to boil. There were also myriad Devil Ridge cultivators in front of him. Lu Yi would avoid them if he could, and if he could not, he would kill his way out. In these 2 days, the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators had seen Lu Ye's various methods and had suffered many casualties. Right now, there were 2 problems in front of them that they could not solve. One was that Lu Ye's flying speed was too fast. He obviously had a way to greatly increase the flying spirit tool's speed in a short period of time. The fastest speed a flying spirit tool could achieve was related to the restriction and quality inside the spirit tool itself. The second was related to the cultivation of the cultivator controlling the spirit tool. Although the myriad Devil Ridge had sent out a lot of people to chase Lu Yi, few could compete with him in speed. Even if they could catch up for a while, they would not be able to last for long. If their speed was not as fast as others, how could they chase after him? If not for this, Lu Yi would not only be chased by dozens of streaks of light, but hundreds and thousands of streaks of light. Even with these dozens of streaks of light, there were still people falling behind. If it was just speed, it would not be a problem. In these 2 days, there were constantly myriad Devil Ridge cultivators lying in ambush on Lu Ye's path. As long as they could delay him for a while, the pursuers would immediately rush over. But in fact, even if there were people blocking in front, it would not be of much use. This sect exterminating Ye's spirit tool was too fierce. This guy's cultivation was only at heaven level 7, but he could actually control 9 spirit tools. Compared to Li Baxian's 100 spirit tools, the gap was naturally huge. Perhaps 9 spirit tools was an extremely amazing achievement. What made the myriad Devil Ridge even more troublesome was that these 9 spirit tools were terrifyingly powerful. There was once a heaven level 9 physique cultivator who stood in front of him. He was almost killed by this guy's 9 imperial equipment. If it wasn't for that physique cultivator's strong physique, he wouldn't have been able to escape. Even so, he still ended up seriously injured. The key was that this guy's spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools was far beyond the standard of a spirit stream realm cultivator. Even a heaven level 9 cultivator couldn't be compared to him. The power and distance of a spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools were related to the strength of a cultivator's mind, the purity of their spirit power, and the control of their spirit power. The myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were very puzzled. This Lu Yi was only a heaven level 7 cultivator. How strong could his mind be, how pure his spirit power was, and how perfect was his control of his spirit power? He could actually use spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools to kill the enemy at a distance of around 700 feet. It had to be known that the limit of a heaven level 9 cultivator's spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools was around 600 feet. Once this distance was exceeded, the spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools would be out of control. If the spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools had a range of 100 feet, it meant that no matter who faced Lu Yi would have the upper hand and then fall into a passive state. When cultivators fought in the air, they usually relied on spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools. This indirectly increased the advantage that Lu Yi had. At this moment, Lu Yi was incomparably glad that he had asked fourth senior brother about some spirit tool controlling 9 spirit tools. He had also listened to his advice and bought a weapon box from the Tianji treasure house. Otherwise, he would not have been able to deal with the encirclement of the myriad Devil Ridge. Chapter 356. With Lu Ye's arrival, the core region was in complete chaos. This place was not a peaceful place to begin with. Lu Ye's arrival had undoubtedly intensified the confrontation between the two factions. The cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge were pursuing and intercepting them. Many cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance could not endure the loneliness and took action to kill off the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were left behind. This indirectly reduced the pressure on Lu Yi. 3 Sacred Academies' encampment was shrouded in a gloomy haze. The only reason was that Lu Yi of the Jade Blood sect was coming. According to the information he received, Lu Yi should be able to arrive at the 3rd Saint Academy in less than 2 hours. 2 days ago, the 3rd Sacred Academy had been looking forward to Lu Yi's arrival. That was because the 3rd Sacred Academy's situation wasn't very good. They hadn't had a spirit stream realm expert in the past few years, which had led to their disciples being suppressed outside. If Lu Yi could come to 3 Sacred Academies' encampment, perhaps it would change their situation. However, when news of Li Baxuan repairing his spirit cavities and reaching the Cloud River realm and leaving the spirit stream battlefield spread, 3 Sacred Academies were dumbfounded. Li Baxuan wasn't in the spirit stream battlefield, and Feng Yuechan had also left. Lu Yi wouldn't be able to bring any benefits to 3 Sacred Academies' encampment. Instead, he would bring disaster to 3 Sacred Academies. Originally, 3 Sacred Academies only needed to face pressure from nearby factions, but now, it was more than that. Senior brother, what did our sect say? Shi Lei, the vice guardian of 3rd Saint Academy, asked. Opposite him, a youth in black said, there's still no clear instructions. This youth was the guardian of 3 Sacred Academies, Situ Han. Then what should we do? Shi Lei frowned. We invited him, so how can we refuse him? If the sect didn't give any clear instructions, then it was an instruction. Situ Han was well aware of this. Shi Lei wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he sighed. Their encampment was already in a bad situation. If they accepted Lu Yi, it would only make things worse, and they might even lose their encampment. However, as Situ Han said, Lu Yi was invited by 3 Sacred Academies, so they couldn't refuse him. They could only grit their teeth and swallow their words. Both of them didn't dare to voice their thoughts. The sect master had undoubtedly made an extremely wrong decision this time. He had originally thought that Lu Yi would be able to rope in the 2 experts from Pil Heart sect to ease the pressure on the outpost. But who would have thought that Lu Yi would spend a huge sum of money to buy aperture replenishing pills for Li Baxuan? As a result, Li Baxuan and Feng Yuechan had both reached the Cloud River realm and left the Spirit Stream battlefield. Pass down the order. Prepare for battle. Situ Han stood up. At this point, there was no other choice. At most, the base would be destroyed, and the accumulation of the past few generations would be destroyed. Compared to these losses, the reputation of the sect had to be preserved. If they really rejected Lu Yi, then the 3rd Saint Courtyard would not be able to establish itself in the Haotian Alliance in the future. Yes. After a while, there were less than 200 cultivators on the side of 3rd Saint Academy. There were only a few Heaven 9 cultivators. After waiting for about an hour, Shi Lei suddenly shouted in a low voice, "They're here." Looking from afar, there was a stream of light on the horizon that was flying towards them at an extremely fast speed. When they looked behind the stream of light, they could vaguely see more streams of light chasing after it. In just a dozen breaths, the stream of light arrived outside the formation's light screen. The cultivators of 3rd Saint Academy looked up and saw that it was a flying spirit tool that looked like a spirit boat. There were 3 figures standing on it. The one in front was a young man who looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. The one in the middle was a pale-faced woman. Standing behind her was a burly man with a snow-white cat lying on top of his head. Situ Han stepped forward. "Are you junior brother Lu Yi from Jade Blood Sect?" On the spirit boat, Lu Yi replied, "Yes." Situ Han raised his hand and gestured for him to pass. He said, "Come in quickly." Under Shirley's control, a gap opened up in the formation. Lu Yi entered on his flying tool and landed on the flying light. He jumped down lightly, and giant armor also jumped down. Only Feng Yu sat on the spirit boat without moving. Lu Yi turned his head to look at her. Feng Yu squeezed out a smile. "My legs are weak." The past 2 days of fleeing had left a deep impression on her. Feng Yu was just an ordinary 8th order cultivator, so she had never experienced such an exciting scene. Along the way, there were at least 800 myriad demons ridge cultivators chasing after them. After shaking off one group, another group would appear. There was an endless stream of them, and each of them seemed to have a grudge against them. There were several times when Feng Yu thought that she was going to die. It wasn't easy for her to hold on until now. Feng Yu's whole body was weak. Lu Yi signaled giant armor with his eyes. Giant armor grabbed Feng Yu's clothes by her waist and lifted her off the spirit boat. Then, he carried her in his hand like a little chick. "Ah!" Feng Yu made a strange sound, and her pale face turned red. It was so embarrassing to be carried like this. Lu Yi put away the spirit boat and turned to look at the 2 people who came up to him. He cupped his fists and asked, "Senior brothers, how should I address you?" Situ Han and Shirley reported their names. Lu Yi bowed. "You must be tired from the journey. Junior brother should rest first. Leave the rest to us," Situ Han gestured. It was only yesterday that Lu Yi finally understood what his 4th senior brother had meant when he said, "I wonder if they'll still dare to accept you when the time comes." The reason why the 3rd Sacred Academy's sect master wanted him to go to the Spirit Stream battlefield wasn't because of how powerful he was, but because of his close relationship with Li Baxi. If he was in trouble at 3 Holy Courtyards camp, Li Baxi would definitely help. Once Li Baxi intervened, Feng Yu Chan would not stay idle. In other words, roping him in was equivalent to adding Li Baxi and Feng Yu Chan. This was the ultimate goal of 3 Holy Courtyards sect master when he proposed the condition to the sect master. However, 3 Holy Courtyards sect master did not expect that Lu Yi would buy an aperture supplement pill for Li Baxi, allowing him to break through to the Cloud River realm. As a result, the condition he proposed before seemed a little foolish. Without Li Baxi and Feng Yu Chan, Lu Yi would only bring endless trouble and disaster to 3 Holy Courtyards camp. How would they dare to accept him? But now, it seemed that 3 Holy Courtyard was still very responsible. Not far away, many cultivators of 3 Holy Courtyard were brimming with killing intent, waiting solemnly. Lu Yi waved his hand. "Thank you for your kindness, senior brothers. I'll borrow your treasured land to rest for a while. I'll leave in a bit." Things were a little different from what he had expected at the beginning. Naturally, he wouldn't stay to harm the 3rd Saint Academy. With his current situation, he would bring endless trouble to any of the Grand Sky Alliance's bases. The 3rd Saint Academy was only a 2nd-grade sect, and there weren't many experts there. If he really stayed, the 3rd Saint Academy's base would be destroyed in a day or 2. Situ Han and Shirley clearly did not expect Lu Yi to make such a decision. Situ Han said, "Junior brother Lu, do you know your current situation? Without the camp's protection, with your cultivation, I'm afraid you'll be in trouble. If I stay, even if I have the camp's protection, how long can it last?" "Senior brother, don't worry. Although I'm not very strong, it won't be that easy for Myriad Devil Ridge to kill me. However, I do have something I need your help with." "Please speak, junior brother." Lu Yi turned around and pointed at Feng Yu, who was being carried by giant armor. This is a disciple of my Jade Blood sect. Can you let her stay in 3 holy courtyard to cultivate? Although her cultivation is not high, she's a medical cultivator. Senior brother, you don't have to take special care of her. Just treat her as your own disciple and give her some food to eat. Feng Yu, who was already blushing, lowered her head even more. She felt like a child from a poor family who had been sent away. Of course, that's not a problem. Situ Han agreed immediately. Not to mention that Feng Yu was a medical cultivator, even if she was not, it would not matter. The fact that Lu Yi took the initiative to not stay in 3 holy courtyards camp was already very shameful. Senior brother, please sign an alliance contract with me. I want to borrow your sect's Tianji pillar. After a short while, in the Tianji hall, Lu Ye's mind connected to the Tianji pillar and entered the Tianji treasury. When he was in Jade Blood sect, he only had around 2,000 merit points left. After killing some people in the past 2 days, his merit points had increased a little and he had also obtained a lot of spoils of war. He left behind some cultivation resources and threw everything else into the Tianji treasury to exchange for merit points, breaking through 4,000 merit points. However, as he continued to do things, his 4,000 merit points quickly decreased until he was only left with 5. It had been a long time since he had been so poor. Lu Yi sighed once again. Merit points were really something that could not be spent. After walking out of the Tianji hall, Situ Han was waiting outside. Lu Yi said, Senior brother Situ, can you arrange some food? In the past 2 days of fleeing, let alone eating or sleeping, they had not even been able to stop for a moment. Whether it was him or giant armor, they had consumed a lot of spirit energy. They could still barely maintain their spirit energy. Lu Yi could take spirit pills to replenish his spirit energy. Giant armor had something like a monster core, but it was difficult to recover the energy it consumed. Please wait a moment. Situ Han responded and quickly arranged things. A moment later, a lot of food was placed in front of Lu Yi and giant armor. The two of them immediately wolfed it down like hungry ghosts. While eating, Lu Yi checked the 10 points chart. He could not stay in the 3rd Holy Academy's encampment for too long. Otherwise, not only would he bring trouble to the 3rd Holy Academy, but he would also lose the initiative. If he stayed here for too long, the myriad Devil Ridge would continue to gather forces. At that time, if the 3rd Holy Academy's encampment was surrounded, he would not be able to escape. The current situation was still good. There were not many people from the myriad Devil Ridge. They had all gathered a few kilometers away from the encampment. However, as the news spread, more and more people would gather. He had to leave before the myriad Devil Ridge gathered to a certain size. However, continuing to flee like this was not a solution. Manpower was sometimes limited, and no one could be sure if there would be any unexpected changes along the way. Therefore, it was best to give the myriad Devil Ridge a certain degree of counterattack while fleeing, letting them know the price of pursuing him. Lu Yi already had some plans in mind, but to implement this plan, he still needed some geographical advantage. He was currently checking the map to see if there was any terrain he could use. Chapter 357. There were many special places in the Spirit Stream battlefield, all of which were extremely dangerous. Even cultivators did not dare to approach them. Some of these places were occupied by powerful monster beasts. For example, the lake where the winged flood dragon lived was a dangerous place. However, the winged flood dragon was not a threat to cultivators. As long as they did not provoke it and offered it some food, they would be able to live peacefully with the winged flood dragon. However, not every monster beast was like the winged flood dragon. These monster beasts were all overlord-level existences that cultivators of the Spirit Stream battlefield could not match. In addition to these overlord-level monster beasts, there were also many natural places. Lu Yi did not want to find these dangerous places. Although he could kill ordinary Heaven Grade 9 cultivators with his current strength, if he really entered these dangerous places, he would not be able to survive, so he did not want to seek excitement. He just wanted to find a suitable place for him to use some of his methods. For example, a natural environment that could block the view from above or make it easier for him to hide. Such places were not difficult to find, so he quickly found a target. After eating and drinking his fill, Lu Yi rested for 4 hours before standing up. Several kilometers away from the 3 Sacred Academies encampment, there were already more than 300 cultivators from the Myriad Demon Ridge gathered here, and there was still a steady stream of people gathering here. It would not be long before they began to attack the 3 Sacred Academies encampment. Inside the formation, Lu Yi took giant armor and bid farewell to Situ Han. Situ Han did not try to persuade him to stay and simply sighed. Junior brother Lu, the 3 Sacred Academies have wronged you. Senior brother Situ is too serious. The 3 Sacred Academies have already done us a great favor by taking in our Jade Blood Sect's disciples. He then turned to look at Feng Yu, who was standing to the side. Don't embarrass the sect. Feng Yu lowered her eyes and obediently replied, yes. Farewell. Lu Yi cupped his fists towards Situ Han and Shirlei before summoning his spirit boat and standing on it with giant armor. He did not leave giant armor behind mainly because giant armor would not be willing. The spirit boat hummed slightly and turned into a streak of light that shot into the sky. Feng Yu took a step forward and shouted in the direction where Lu Yi had left, "Fifth senior brother, you must be careful." She had very mixed feelings about Lu Yi. She used to resent him, but ever since he accepted her as a formal disciple of the Jade Blood Sect, her resentment faded a lot. She followed him into the inner circle and stayed in 3 Sacred Academies encampment under his arrangements. If she was still a cultivator of the Feng family, she definitely wouldn't be able to enjoy such treatment. She suddenly discovered that leaving the Feng family and joining the Blue Blood Sect might not be a bad thing for her. If only 5th senior brother could be friendlier to her. The spirit boat turned into a stream of light and rushed out of the defensive formation, quickly flying into the distance. Seeing this, the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge who were waiting outside chased after it. In an instant, the sky was filled with streams of light. In just a moment, the area outside the 3rd Saint Academy's encampment was empty. To the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge, hunting down Lu Yi was more important than anything else. As long as they killed Lu Yi, not only would they obtain an unimaginably huge reward, but they would also no longer have to live in fear in the Myriad Devil Ridge. Now, the Myriad Demons Ridge's fear of him had shifted from his method of breaking the formation to his own strength. He could kill a Heaven 9 cultivator with his Heaven 7 cultivation. If he reached Heaven 9, who would be able to deal with him in the Spirit Stream battlefield? The Myriad Demons Ridge did not want to experience the horror of having an entire camp dominated by one person. The difference in cultivation was obvious at a glance. Those with lower cultivation and weaker spirit tools would quickly fall behind. Even if their cultivation reached Heaven 8 or Heaven 9, it would be difficult for them to catch up to Lu Yi. Fortunately, the Myriad Demons Ridge had worked together. As long as Lu Yi did not hide, they would never have to worry about losing his trail. A day later, Lu Ye's figure disappeared from the sight of the Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators. The last place he appeared was in a vast mountain range. According to the map, this mountain range was called the Hidden Fog Mountain. From its name, one could tell that this dense forest was shrouded in thick fog all year round. If a cultivator flew by on an artifact in the air, they would be able to see a vast expanse of fog and rolling clouds below. It was a spectacular sight. Trees that were hundreds of meters tall were hidden in the clouds, and only their umbrella-like canopies towered above the sea of clouds. In the depths of the forest, fierce beasts were entrenched, but there were also many rare treasures. Therefore, the Hidden Fog Mountain was a very famous mountain range in the entire core region. Many cultivators liked to come here to collect herbs or catch some monsters. However, this place was also accompanied by some danger. This was because there were 3 Overlord-level monsters here. Fortunately, overlord-level monsters were very intelligent. They usually lived in their own territory. As long as one did not trespass on their territory, they would not attract any hostility. Lu Yi did not go anywhere else but entered the hidden fog mountain. It was obvious that he wanted to use this place to escape the pursuit of the Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators. How could the cultivators from the Myriad Demons Ridge tolerate this? They quickly called upon their friends, and more cultivators from the Myriad Demons Ridge joined in the pursuit. In the past, the hidden fog mountain was not very lively. However, in just a few days, countless cultivators went deep into the mountain and it became a bit noisy. Because of the environment, the vision of the cultivators was blocked when they flew in the air. They could only descend and follow. The Myriad Demons Ridge's operation was organized. Many ghost cultivators who were good at hiding their tracks were scattered into the hidden fog mountain to search for Lu Ye's figure. If they found any clues, they would immediately send a message. As for the others, they divided into small teams and continued to explore the depths of the hidden fog mountain. The number of people in each team varied, but there were at least 10 people. This was because if there were too few people, even if they found Lu Yi, they might not be able to capture him. The distance between the teams was not too far to ensure that they could support each other at any time. One had to admit that the Myriad Demons Ridge's arrangements were very thorough. Under such arrangements, a vigorous pursuit began. Yu Qi was one of the many ghost cultivators who went deep into the hidden fog mountain to track Lu Yi. His cultivation was not too high in the core region, but it was not low either. He had opened 310 apertures and was at the 8th heaven stage. He was 50 apertures away from 9th heaven. At the beginning of cultivation, 50 apertures was nothing. Anyone with a bit of talent could open 50 apertures. However, at Yu Qi's level, he could clearly feel the resistance. As the number of spirit apertures opened increased, the barrier of the spirit apertures became thicker and the process became more and more difficult. There was no way to keep trying to open spirit apertures because the more you tried, the easier it would be for the spirit apertures to break. Once they broke, the spirit aperture would be crippled and could only be repaired by the aperture replenishing pill. He knew that if he didn't have a special opportunity, it would be impossible for him to open 360 apertures. However, he was unwilling to reach Cloud River just like that. This was the mentality of most cultivators. At this point, everyone wanted to reach a higher level. Even if they couldn't reach the next level, they would do their best to open more spirit apertures. This was because the more spirit apertures one opened, the more potential one had after reaching Cloud River. The reason they could persevere was that there was something called the barrier-breaking pill in this world. Compared to the aperture replenishing pill's astronomical price of 160,000 merit points, the barrier-breaking pill's price of 500 merit points was a very good price that hadn't changed even after so many years. However, even for the core region cultivators, 500 merit points were not easy to obtain. Besides, a cultivator like Yu Qi needed a huge amount of barrier-breaking pills. Perhaps the first pill could help him open one spiritual cavity, but the next spiritual cavity would require 2 or even 3 pills. The more spiritual cavities he opened with the help of barrier-breaking pills, the greater the consumption of barrier-breaking pills. When the barrier-breaking pills no longer had any effect, the cultivator would have reached the end of the spirit stream realm and would have no choice but to break through to the Cloud River realm. Yu Qi was 50 apertures away from 9th heaven. One could only imagine how many barrier-breaking pills he would need. It was impossible for him to accumulate so many merit points by himself. Chasing after Lu Yi was an opportunity. As long as he could kill Lu Yi, he would have enough capital to open more spirit apertures. As a ghost cultivator who had been communicating with the underworld all year round, Yu Qi was very confident in his concealment skills. It could be said that every ghost cultivator had this kind of confidence. He was also very lucky, because a few days after entering the hidden fog mountain, he actually found Lu Yi's whereabouts. Lu Yi was sitting cross-legged on a large rock next to a clear mountain spring. There was a bonfire next to him, and the body cultivator called Giant Armor was roasting a wild boar. The oily skin emitted an enticing fragrance, and the oil dripped onto the bonfire, making sizzling sounds. There was also a large snow-white cat-like demonic beast that was crawling on the side, gnawing on the bloody beast meat. At that moment, Yuchi almost couldn't suppress his heartbeat, because for any cultivator of the myriad Devil Ridge, this youth who looked to be only 17 or 18 years old was a moving treasury. As long as he was killed, the wealth in the treasury would be inexhaustible. Yuchi glanced at Lu Yi, who was meditating, and then at Zhu Jia, who was barbecuing meat beside him. Yuchi cursed in his heart. How careless were these two fellows. They were being chased by so many people from the myriad Demon's Ridge, yet they were still in the mood to barbecue meat. He gently took a breath, calmed his excitement, and then slowly approached Lu Yi. For a ghost cultivator, Lu Ye's current state was even more tempting than a roasted wild boar. As long as he could sneak within 10 meters of him, he was confident that he could kill him with a sure kill blow. He was a ghost cultivator who was born to be able to kill enemies above his level. Stepping on the soft leaves without making any sound, Yuchi exerted his cultivation over the years to the extreme. 10 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters, Yuchi's movements suddenly stiffened, and fine sweat seeped out of his forehead because he suddenly found a corpse lying behind the boulder where Lu Yi was sitting. Judging from the corpse's attire, it was undoubtedly a ghost cultivator. Sticking his head out to look at the corpse's face, Yuchi's mind buzzed. He recognized this ghost cultivator, who came from a second-grade sect and was a ninth-grade ghost cultivator, much stronger than him. Chapter 358. There were no traces of fighting around, but there was the body of a Heaven Level 9 ghost cultivator lying here. The situation seemed a little complicated. Then he looked up and met Lu Ye's expressionless eyes. Cold sweat flowed from Yuchi's forehead. Almost at the moment when they looked at each other, Yuchi knew that he had been exposed. Although he didn't understand how he was exposed. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a Heaven Level 7 soldier cultivator like Lu Yi to discover his whereabouts. Ghost cultivators were indeed born to kill enemies above their level, but the deterrence of a ghost cultivator who exposed his whereabouts would undoubtedly be greatly reduced. Almost without any hesitation, Yuchi's figure leaped backward. At this moment, he broke out with an unprecedented speed. With a swishing sound, 3 streamers shot toward him in a triangular formation. He had long heard of Lu Ye's ability to control spiritual weapons, so he hurriedly summoned his own spiritual weapon. With a few clangs, the 3 streams of light that were attacking him were sent flying away. Yuchi also flew more than 30 meters away with the help of the counterforce. However, as soon as he steadied himself, another stream of light quietly approached from the side. Yuchi hurriedly dodged, but the streamer still grazed his shoulder. In an instant, he felt a sharp pain and blood flowed out of his shoulder. At the same time, another swishing sound came from behind his head. Looking up, he saw 5 or 6 streamers coming from different angles. At this moment, only one thought flashed through Yuchi's mind. My life is over. He knew that Lu Yi was very strong. With his Heaven Level 7 cultivation, he could kill a Heaven Level 9 cultivator, but after all, he had only heard about it before. He didn't have a clear idea until now. He was a Heaven Level 8 cultivator with 310 acupoints opened, but he didn't even have a chance to fight back against Lu Yi, who was 1 level lower than him. And from the beginning to the end, Lu Yi just sat there without moving and forced him into a desperate situation with only the method of controlling weapons. This kind of strength was beyond the scope of his understanding. At the moment of life and death, he raised his hand and pressed on his battlefield imprint, urgently sending out a message. There was only one thought in his mind. It didn't matter if he died, but he had to quickly reveal Lu Yi's location. He didn't do this when he found Lu Yi before, mainly because he wanted to take all the benefits from killing Lu Yi, but now he had to send out a message. He just didn't know if it was in time. Clang! With a soft sound, Yuchi could almost feel the sharpness of the sharp weapons coming from all directions. Then, he found that he was not dead. The spirit weapons all stopped when they were only an inch away from him. Yuchi maintained his stiff posture and didn't dare to move. Big drops of sweat slid down his face. Yuchi rolled his eyes and looked at Lu Yi, who was still sitting there. "Have you finished sending the message?" Lu Yi asked. "What?" Yuchi didn't react. "Has the news been sent out?" "Yes," Yuchi replied instinctively. "Very good." As he said that, the spiritual tools hovering in front of Yuchi burst with dazzling light. When he was about to die, Yuchi gritted his teeth and said, "I'll wait for you on the road to the underworld." Blood splashed everywhere. The protective spiritual power that Yuchi condensed in a hurry was like a piece of paper under the attack of the spiritual weapons. The spiritual weapons penetrated his vital parts one after another, bringing out puffs of blood and flying back to the weapon box on Lu Ye's waist. Plop, Yuchi's body fell down. Zhu Jia put down the half-roasted boar in his hand, walked forward, picked up Yuchi's body, took off the storage bag on his waist, and threw the body behind the boulder. Behind the boulder, several corpses were lying in a mess. They were all ghost cultivators who had found Lu Ye's whereabouts. However, these ghost cultivators were too troublesome. Every ghost cultivator who had discovered Lu Ye's whereabouts had vainly tried to kill him with their own strength. In the end, not a single one of them had been left behind. Before those ghost cultivators died, they couldn't even reveal his location. Until Yuchi. After several days of deployment, a lot of merit points were spent. Now that his location had been exposed, a killing feast was about to begin. Just a moment after Yuchi died, in the hidden fog mountain, the teams of the Myriad Devil Ridge began to quickly approach Lu Ye's location. The team closest to him took only half an incense stick worth of time to arrive, but after discovering Lu Ye's whereabouts from afar, this team did not attack rashly. Instead, they quietly lay in wait, waiting for the other teams to approach. An hour later, the number of teams that had gathered had reached 5, with more than 70 people. There were even more teams approaching them. Only then did several teams begin to surround him. As the distance closed, killing intent began to burst forth. At this time, it didn't matter whether they hid their whereabouts or not. Looking at the figure standing on the boulder, the eyes of every cultivator of the Myriad Devil Ridge were full of fire. Lu Ye, die. Kill Lu Ye. Avenge the dead fellow Taoists. Angry shouts came from all directions, and at first glance, it was as if many chivalrous heroes were besieging an unpardonable great demon. The light of imperial artifacts and spells began to bloom as they rumbled towards Lu Yi. However, to the astonishment of all the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge, Lu Yi still stood there, motionless. Facing the overwhelming attacks, he didn't even have the intention to dodge. What the hell was this guy doing? All the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were puzzled when they saw this scene. Even an ordinary Cloud River Tier cultivator wouldn't dare to take such an attack head-on, let alone a Heaven Tier 7 cultivator. Unless he wanted to die. Of course, Lu Yi wouldn't seek death. Just as the attacks were about to hit him, a formation flag suddenly appeared in his hand. With a light wave of the flag and a surge of spiritual power, a light barrier visible to the naked eye suddenly rose, tightly enveloping him and the giant armor. On the light screen barrier, defensive spirit tattoos were swimming back and forth like fish. A defensive formation, a cultivator of the Myriad Devil Ridge shouted. Only now did he understand why Lu Yi was so arrogant. The place where he stood had obviously been set up by a defensive formation. This defensive formation was of the same origin as the defensive formation of the encampment, but because the space needed to be protected wasn't large, it was exceptionally sturdy. The reason why Lu Yi was feared by all parties of the Myriad Devil Ridge was because of the formation-breaking methods he used in the inner circle. If he could break a formation of the level of the defensive formation, setting up a formation was naturally not a problem. A feeling of uneasiness rose in the hearts of many cultivators of the myriad Devil Ridge. They subconsciously thought of a problem they had neglected all this time. Rumbling sounds rang out as the power of many weapons and spells fell. Layers of ripples appeared on the light barrier enveloping Lu Yi and the giant armor. The light barrier's luster dimmed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It would probably shatter in less than 10 breaths. However, at this moment, another formation flag appeared in Lu Ye's hand. When the formation flag was waved, a dozen cultivators of the myriad Devil Ridge attacking from the side all felt a stabbing pain on their skin, and a great sense of danger grew in their hearts. At the same time, bright patterns appeared under their feet. In the blink of an eye, they gathered into a large formation that covered a radius of more than 30 meters. 4 hidden formation flags appeared around the large formation. The formation flags resonated with each other, and the spiritual power stored in the formation flags outlined a spirit pattern. Burst. This was a spirit pattern that Lu Yi had only recently obtained from the talent tree. This spirit pattern was most suitable to be used in formations. He had obtained a large amount of knowledge about formations when he challenged the 100 Formation Pagoda in the Sky Expanse sect. This had allowed his attainments in formations to rise to an unimaginable level. Moreover, the benefits of being enlightened were not immediately apparent. Much of the knowledge was worth pondering over and over again. In the process, he would continue to improve his formations. During the challenge of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had set up many formations according to the requirements of the pagoda. Therefore, in terms of formations, Lu Yi was no longer the same as before. Lu Yi also wanted to know how strong the power of such a big formation, which was set up with the 4 formation flags as the framework and the explosive spiritual tattoos as the foundation, would be after being filled with the spiritual energy of a large number of spiritual stones by Lu Yi. The myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were wary of his ability to break formations, but no one had tested his ability to set up formations. Run! A myriad Devil Ridge cultivator shouted. However, it was still too late. The violent spiritual power boiled to the limit in an instant. The moment the burst spirit pattern was formed, the earth shook and the mountains shook. A deafening roar rang out. All the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were charging towards Lu Yi were shocked and stopped in their tracks almost instinctively. Looking in that direction, they saw a rain of blood and broken limbs everywhere. More than half of the myriad Devil Ridge team of more than 10 people had died in an instant. The remaining ones were not in good shape either. They fell to the ground and howled miserably. The power of this explosion spirit design was better than he had expected. However, it had also cost a lot. The 4 formation flags had been destroyed in that explosion. Naturally, these 4 formation flags were not a reward from the 100 Formation Pagoda. The formation flags rewarded by the 100 Formation Pagoda were extraordinary and Lu Yi did not dare to waste them. He had bought these 4 formation flags from the Tianji treasure vault. Each formation flag was priced from dozens of merit points to hundreds of merit points. This price was almost equivalent to a decent low-grade spiritual weapon. Lu Yi had spent almost all of his merit points on formation flags and formation bases. In fact, if Lu Yi had enough strength, he could buy some materials and refine the array flags he needed in the air with the advantage of his fire attribute spiritual energy. However, his cultivation was not at that level yet and he did not have the time or conditions to refine them himself. He could only buy ready-made ones from the Tianji treasure vault. It was not a loss for him. This way, killing enemies would earn him merit points. Moreover, he could sell the spoils of war to earn merit points or spirit stones. If the enemies he killed were rich enough, not only would he not lose out, he would even make a profit. At the same time that the first explosion array was activated, several other arrays were also activated. A second explosion rang out. The myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were enveloped by the formation followed in the footsteps of the previous team and suffered heavy casualties. The other formations were not burst formations. However, each of them had their own unique uses. Under Lu Ye's control, the formations shot out spell after spell, causing the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators to complain incessantly. Chapter 359. The first batch of more than 700,000 Devil Ridge cultivators had suffered more than 20 casualties in an instant after the Dharma arrays exploded. The remaining cultivators were also struggling to resist the power of the Dharma arrays. From time to time, they would be injured and scream before they were killed. The protective formation that enveloped Lu Yi and the giant armor had already shattered. Although the formation was very sturdy, it also had its own limits. After blocking a round of fierce attacks from the Devil Ridge cultivators, it had already been broken. However, at this moment, none of the Devil Ridge cultivators had the time to attack him. On the giant rock, Lu Yi constantly waved the formation flag in his hand, activating the power of the formations around him to the maximum. The scene was very chaotic. Finally, a cultivator who saw that the situation was not good shouted, "Hurry up and get out of the formation." This group of people had come aggressively, but they had suffered heavy casualties before they could even get close to Lu Yi. Naturally, the most important thing now was to leave this place. Under the premise that they didn't know if there were more formations in the surroundings, flying on their artifacts was the best choice. It was impossible for there to be formations in the air. As soon as that person's voice fell, the panicked cultivators finally reacted and took out their flying spirit tools. In such a dense forest, there were tall trees with towering treetops and many obstacles. Flying on their magic tools was not a good choice. If they were not careful, they could crash into a tree. However, at this moment, the Devil Ridge cultivators had no better choice. Many spirit tools rose into the air, and the surviving cultivators of the Devil Ridge wanted to escape from this dangerous place. However, before they could do so, Lu Yi waved the formation flag in his hand again. In the next moment, bright lines appeared on the ground and a new formation was activated. At the same time the formation was activated, all the cultivators in the air felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Their bodies suddenly became incomparably heavy. Even if they tried their best to resist, they couldn't block the invisible force pressing down from above. "Forbidden flight," a cultivator shouted in horror. Forbidden flight was a very famous formation, but it was definitely not something a spirit stream realm cultivator could set up. Therefore, such a sudden change caused everyone to panic. Lu Yi indeed could not set up a forbidden flight. A true forbidden flight would completely deprive the ability to fly. The formation that was activated now was only set up with heavy pressure spirit patterns as the core. If a cultivator could withstand the huge pressure, they could still fly away. However, the power of a formation was so strong that it was not something a spirit stream realm cultivator could withstand. Exclamations and screams rose one after another as figures fell in a sorry state. Before he could land on the ground, a powerful spell had already swept over from below. It was a blazing fire lotus. Yi's figure had appeared at some point below the fire lotus. Her hands were raised high, and spiritual energy was surging around her. Wherever the flames swept, the myriad demons' rich cultivators who had yet to adjust their posture were turned into balls of fire. Giant armor ran out and casually grabbed the thigh of a cultivator who fell from the sky. Then, like a spiked club, it swung this person up and smashed him into the nearby enemies. Lu Yi jumped down from the boulder and placed one hand on the hilt of his saber. He strolled leisurely in this hellish field. Sizzling sounds came from the weapon box as 9 rays of light shuttled back and forth in all directions, bringing with them puffs of hot blood. The mountain pan saber was unsheathed from time to time. Beside him, Hoopa had already revealed his true form. His vigorous figure shuttled back and forth in the battlefield. Pale golden demon essence rolled around his body. When his huge claws slammed down, it was often the scene of broken heads and broken bones. It was not that the people of the Devil Ridge were not strong enough. Those who dared to pursue Lu Yi here were all cultivators who had converted to heaven rank cultivation methods. The lowest cultivation level was at heaven rank 7. With more than 70 people moving together, they would not be afraid even if they faced Yun He alone. However, Lu Yi had already made arrangements. Just the 2 explosion formations alone had caused the Devil Ridge to suffer many casualties. After that, the activation and transformation of the various formations were even more overwhelming. With so many methods used, the 70 or so people suddenly became a motley crew. What awaited them was only the fate of being slaughtered. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the battle ended. Around the boulder, on the messy battlefield, there were mutilated corpses lying across. There was also an unpleasant burnt smell mixed with the smell of blood. More than 70 people had died in this battle. Originally, there were a few people who had a chance to escape. However, they were a little too late and were blocked by the elusive Yi. She cooperated with Hoopa to kill them all. After cleaning up the battlefield and collecting the spoils of war, the group quickly left this place. A moment later, more Devil Ridge cultivators gathered here. After a round of investigation, the results were horrifying. The first 5 groups to find Lu Ye's whereabouts were completely annihilated. Combined with the information that the dead Devil Ridge cultivators had transmitted before they died and the remnants of the battlefield before them, it was obvious that Sect Annihilating Yi had used the power of the formation to achieve such an unimaginable feat. For a moment, the Devil Ridge cultivators' hearts were heavy. Lu Ye was strong and fast. Previously, so many Devil Ridge cultivators had chased after him, but they had not been able to kill him and had allowed him to escape into the vast hidden fog mountain. Originally, they thought that this was a good opportunity to get rid of him. Who would have thought that this guy would display his extraordinary ability to set up formations? Just based on the remnants of the formations here, there were no less than 7 of the formations that Sect Annihilating Yi had set up here. There were also many broken formation flags and formation foundations left on the battlefield. It was only now that many Devil Ridge cultivators realized the problem that they had overlooked before. Lu Ye could even break a formation at the level of the encampment's protective formation. How could his ability to set up formations be weak? In this vast forest, clouds and mist were rising, making it difficult to search for people in the air. No one knew if they would suddenly step into a formation if they chased in the forest. Once they fell into such a trap, they would definitely die. For a moment, the surrounding environment seemed to have become dangerous, causing people to panic. Everyone, there's no need to panic. Just as many Devil Ridge cultivators were feeling uneasy, someone suddenly stood up and said solemnly, even if Lu Ye has the ability to set up formations, he can't keep this up forever. As if to increase the persuasiveness of his words, when this person spoke, he intentionally or unintentionally revealed his spirit aura. His Heaven Level 9 cultivation was clearly visible. "Senior brother, how should I address you?" someone asked politely. "Thousand Feather Sect, Qin Zheng." As soon as this name came out, many people immediately checked the battlefield imprint. Soon, someone exclaimed, "Senior Brother Qin, who is ranked 98th on the Spirit Stream list." When a cultivator's cultivation reached a certain level, they could use their own battlefield imprint to connect to the mysteries of the heavens and investigate things that they could not access before, such as the Spirit Stream list. At this moment, Qin Zheng's name was ranked 3rd from the bottom of the Spirit Stream list. Even though he was ranked 3rd from the bottom, he was still someone on the Spirit Stream list, an existence that ordinary Spirit Stream realm cultivators could only hope to reach. Previously, no one had known that there was an expert on the Spirit Stream list among the people chasing after Lu Ye. It wasn't that the experts on the Spirit Stream list weren't tempted by the rewards for killing Lu Ye, but that most of them had a high opinion of themselves and would rarely team up with others. After all, people like Qin Zheng were in the minority. Furthermore, he had always kept a low profile. If it weren't for the sake of boosting morale, he wouldn't have introduced himself. Hearing people mention the Spirit Stream list, Qin Zheng's face reddened. His rank of 98th on the Spirit Stream list was somewhat inexplicable. That was because, just a few days ago, he had not been on the list. In the end, the top 3 of the spirit stream list had all suddenly disappeared, and he had somehow ended up on the list. Senior brother Qin, what did you mean just now? Asked the person who had spoken earlier. Qin Zheng said, to be honest, I can barely be considered a formation cultivator. He held half of a formation flag in his hand. Therefore, I have some understanding of the Tao of formations. This is the formation flag that Lu Yiye used to set up the formation, and he bought it from the Heaven's secret treasure house. Why do you say that? Qin Zheng smiled, and another formation flag appeared in his hand. Because I bought it before. For us spirit stream stage cultivators, creating formation flags requires quite a bit of effort. Therefore, if you have enough contribution points, buying them from the Heaven's secret treasure house will save you a lot of time and effort. In the Heaven's secret treasure house, each of these formation flags is about the same price as a low-grade spirit artifact. I don't know how many of them Lu Yiye bought, but there are rumors that he bought supplement aperture pills for Li Baxian. I'm sure many of you have heard of the price of those pills, so even Lu Yiye shouldn't have too many formation flags on him. Someone understood the meaning behind Qin Zheng's words. Senior brother Qin, are you saying that once the formation flags in Lu Yiye's hands are used up, he won't be able to set up another formation? That is, unless he buys more. From what I saw just now, there are about 10 or so formation flags that have been destroyed. There are also 4 formation bases. Just those alone would require no less than 1,000 contribution points. Furthermore, he should have taken away some of the formation flags that haven't been destroyed yet. That bastard is really rich. 1,000 contribution points, how many of our myriad Devil Ridge's ambitious people have he killed? How hateful. Don't forget about the aperture replenishing pill. Lu Yiye is just a leech that crawls over our myriad Devil Ridge's cultivators and sucks their blood. He's strengthened himself, but our myriad Devil Ridge's cultivators have suffered. The group of people were filled with righteous indignation as they criticized Lu Yiye. Seeing that the topic had suddenly deviated, Qin Zheng said in a clear voice, everyone, don't be scared by Lu Yiye's method of setting up a formation. If we give up now, our fellow Taoists who died before will have died in vain. If we continue to pursue him, we might die because of this. However, for the future of Myriad Devil Ridge, as long as we can kill Lu Yiye, it will be worth it no matter how many people die. We really can't let him continue to grow. Otherwise, no one in the entire Spirit Stream battlefield will be able to deal with him. I presume that none of you want such a character to appear in Grand Heaven Alliance, right? Senior brother Qin is right. Someone else said, although we gathered together before, we didn't have a unified command. That's why we suffered such a big loss. Since Senior brother Qin is someone on the Spirit Stream list, why don't we let Senior brother Qin take charge of this matter, and we'll follow his orders? Quite a few people agreed with this proposal. Qin Zheng pondered for a moment before nodding and saying, indeed, we need a unified command to succeed. Since so many fellow Taoists like me, this Qin won't refuse. If anyone feels that they are more suitable than this Qin, they can recommend themselves. This Qin isn't a jealous person and will naturally step down. Chapter 360. Previously, no one from the Myriad Devil Ridge stood up to command because they didn't think it was necessary. With so many people chasing after a few people, they would succeed sooner or later. Why would they need someone to command them? However, after seeing Lu Yiye's method of setting up formations, the Myriad Devil Ridge realized that if they continued like this, they wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. Therefore, after a simple discussion, an even tighter group was formed. Everyone only had one goal. Kill Lu Yiye. In order to better boost morale, Qin Zheng even gave this group a name. Anyone who wanted to kill Lu Yi could join the Eliminating Leaf Alliance unconditionally and share all kinds of information with others. Since Lu Yiye has the means to set up formations, there must be many formations ahead waiting for us. If we want to reduce the number of casualties, we have to try our best to find the traces of these formations and find a way to avoid or destroy them. If there are any formation cultivators among you, please protect them well. In addition, fellow Taoists from the Beast Taming School and the Yenchur School, please use your demon beasts and mechanical beasts to scout ahead to avoid casualties. As Qin Zheng's voice sounded, orders were passed down one after another. The entire Eliminating Leaf Alliance quickly and carefully operated. Teams once again spread out and went deep into the hidden fog mountain to investigate Lu Ye's whereabouts. A moment later, a loud sound came from the depths of the hidden fog mountain, mixed with violent spirit power fluctuations. When the nearby myriad Devil Ridge cultivators received the news and rushed over, they saw a mess. There were traces of formations left behind, destroyed formation flags, and a dozen or so corpses lying on the ground. A myriad Devil Ridge team was destroyed just like that. One after another, teams triggered the formations set up by Lu Yi in advance. The casualties gradually increased, but the Eliminating Leaf Alliance was not without gains. As the formation cultivators and Yenchur cultivators exerted their strength, some formations were activated or broken, but they didn't have the effect they were supposed to have. Time passed little by little. As the chase continued, the two sides entered the depths of the hidden fog mountain. The Eliminating Leaf Alliance had lost nearly 200 people. This kind of casualties didn't make the Eliminating Leaf Alliance give up the chase. Instead, it made them even more determined to eliminate the root of the problem. This was because Lu Ye's strength was already terrifying enough, and he was only a Heaven 7 cultivator. If he advanced to Heaven 9, no one in the Spirit Stream battlefield would be able to deal with him. At that time, this huge battlefield would probably be dominated by him alone. This was something that the myriad Demons Ridge could not tolerate. The higher-ups of the major sects had also ordered the core cultivators to eliminate Lu Yi at all costs to avoid future troubles. After 7 days of pursuit, the number of cultivators who died, excluding Yi Meng, had reached 300. Even the cultivators at the Spirit Ocean realm felt their hearts skip a beat. These 300-plus people were all good seedlings who had switched to cultivating heaven-grade cultivation techniques and could advance to Cloud River realm at any time. Lu Yi had killed 300 people here, which was equivalent to the myriad Demon Ridge losing 300 Cloud River tier cultivators. How could they not feel pained? What's more, there were a few of them who were at Heaven level 9. They had a high chance of reaching the Spirit Sea realm. The pursuit did not stop. Instead, it became even more intense. This was because the development of the situation confirmed Qin Zheng's previous speculation. Lu Yi was arranging fewer and fewer spirit arrays now. Most of the time, he was hiding, waiting for the cultivators of the Leaf Eradication League to come close to attack. This undoubtedly meant that he didn't have many formation flags left in his possession, and it would be difficult for him to set up formations as unbridled as before. After confirming this, Qin Zheng immediately ordered the teams not far away to merge in pairs. They hadn't dared to merge before because they were afraid of the power of the spirit array. The loss of one team stepping into the spirit array was better than two teams. Now that they had merged, the risk was much lower than before. Moreover, with more people, they would have a greater advantage if they encountered Lu Yi. After this simple order was given, Lu Ye's situation became a little difficult. Originally, there were more than 10 people in a team from the Myriad Demons Ridge. He had cooperated with Giant Armor, Yi, and Hu Pa. There was a high chance that they could take down a team if they launched a sneak attack. But now, there were more than 20 people in each team, which was a little difficult to contend with. The array flags and array bases that Lu Yi had spent several thousand contribution points to buy from the Tianji treasury had been completely used up. The only remaining array flags he had were the 32 rewarded by the 100 Formation Pagoda. Lu Yi could not bear to use them up. Even so, Lu Yi had also earned quite a bit. Killing enemies gave him merit points. Additionally, there were also the various spoils of war that he collected. The cultivators from the core circle were richer compared to the cultivators from the inner circle. Thus, the spirit artifacts they used were of a higher grade. There were 4 storage pouches hanging from Lu Ye's waist. With the exception of the one he usually used, the other 3 were filled to the brim. After the encounter with the myriad demons' ridge cultivators, the group silently healed. Lu Yi had chosen to enter the hidden fog mountain because he wasn't willing to just be hunted. In this special environment, he could take the initiative. That was why he had bought the array flags and array bases that cost thousands of merit points in advance at the 3rd Saint Academy station. However, Lu Yi had somewhat underestimated the myriad demons' ridge's tenacity. He had killed so many people with the help of the spirit array, but the myriad demons' ridge still didn't let him go. The current situation wasn't very good for him, but it wasn't very bad either. The natural environment of the hidden fog mountain made it difficult for him to be surrounded by a large number of people. With his means, as long as he wasn't surrounded, he could kill his way out. He was the one who initiated the battle just now. Since the myriad devil ridge was unwilling to let him off, he naturally couldn't back down. Now, more than 300 cultivators from the myriad devil ridge had died at his hands. As long as he continued to kill, there would come a time when the myriad devil ridge couldn't take it anymore. Lu Ye's injuries weren't too serious, so he took a healing pill and silently recovered. However, in just a moment, Yi, who was investigating the situation nearby, sent a message that there were quite a number of myriad demons' ridge cultivators approaching. Lu Yi could only get up and continue to rush into the depths of the hidden fog mountain with giant armor and hupa. If ordinary cultivators were forced like this, the consumption of spirit power would definitely be a problem. If a cultivator didn't have spirit power to use, then what kind of cultivator was he? However, Lu Yi had the talent tree in the gluttonous meal, so his spirit power was replenished extremely quickly. Moreover, he still had a dozen bottles of resting fruit wine that he could use. The myriad demons' ridge wanted to use this pestering method to squeeze out time for him to recover, but it was obviously a miscalculation. The only thing Lu Yi needed to consider now was his stamina. The time he could use to recover was too short. After these days, Lu Yi clearly felt a little tired. As time passed, this feeling of exhaustion continued to deepen. After traveling for more than 10 miles, he stopped again to rest. Lu Yi took out some jerky from his storage bag and gave some to Hupa and giant armor. He also stuffed some into his mouth and slowly chewed. At this point, this chase had evolved into a competition of endurance and temperament. It depended on who would give up first. Lu Yi couldn't take the initiative to retreat. Since the myriad demons' ridge cultivators dared to chase him, they had to be mentally prepared for a counterattack. Suddenly, there was a buzzing sound. Lu Yi turned his eyes and saw a 3-inch-long wasp circling in front of giant armor. Giant armor reached out and grabbed the wasp. Then, he opened his palm and pinched the wasp. No one knew what he was doing. When giant armor let go of the wasp, there was an almost imperceptible thread tied to its body. Don't be fooled by giant shell's burly appearance, he was actually a very slender man. This was especially true when it came to flying spirit artifacts. When he was piloting them, he would often perform some amazing maneuvers that even Lu Yi would gasp in amazement. To be able to tie such a silk thread around the wasp, it was obvious that it came from the same talent. The wasp flapped its wings and flew away. Giant armor beckoned to Lu Yi and stepped forward to follow. Lu Yi vaguely guessed his purpose. The 2 people and 1 tiger followed the wasp all the way. After traveling for about a few miles, they found a beehive on the branch of a big tree. The beehive was about 3 meters in radius. It was bone white and oval. Wasps that went out constantly returned and flew into the beehive. Giant armor summoned his air transportation spirit artifact and flew to the front of the beehive. He raised his hand and plucked the big guy. In an instant, the wasps in the beehive swarmed out and surrounded giant armor. However, how could the coarse and thick giant carapace be afraid of the bites of these little things? It casually waved its hand and landed in front of Lu Yi. When it opened the beehive, pale golden honey appeared, and a sweet fragrance wafted out. Giant Armor handed half of the beehive to Lu Yi and sat down with the other half. It was as if he was holding a huge watermelon. He scooped up the honey with his hand and ate it heartily. His mouth was golden and he was smiling happily. At a glance, it was clear that he had done this kind of thing before. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to be so familiar with it. Lu Yi also dug out a piece of honey and put it in his mouth. The sweet taste immediately overflowed his mouth. What surprised Lu Yi even more was that this thing was not only sweet but not greasy, it also contained some very pure spiritual power, which had some effect on her own recovery. He understood that this honey was brewed from the spirit flowers of the hidden fog mountain collected by the wasps. It naturally contained spiritual power. This was good stuff. If a cultivator could take this honey at the beginning of their cultivation, it would be of great help to their growth. Of course, for someone of Lu Ye's cultivation, it was not of much help. The two ate in large mouthfuls. Lu Yi gave some to Hupa from time to time. Only Yi watched bitterly from the side. The two people and one tiger were surrounded by swarms of wasps, buzzing incessantly as if they were complaining about the bandits in front of them. After a full meal, the two people and one tiger lay on the ground, satisfied. Soon, Lu Yi was surprised to find that his exhaustion was rapidly fading and his physical strength had recovered greatly. He understood that the honey did not seem to be as simple as recovering some spiritual power. This was really good stuff, especially for Lu Ye's current situation. Although he always kept some food in his storage bag, whether it was him, Giant Armor, or Hupa, they were all people with astonishing appetites. They had already eaten most of the food they had. Being chased by the people of Myriad Devil Ridge, they did not even have time to hunt. Even if they did manage to catch some prey, they did not have time to cook it. This honey had come at the right time. If possible, he could store more. Chapter 361. Thinking of this, Lu Yi hurriedly got up and ordered Giant Armor to go deeper. Half an hour later, Lu Yi stood under a big tree and looked up at a bone-white oval beehive. He didn't expect to find a second beehive so easily. Giant Armor flew into the air, picked up the beehive, and put it into the storage bag. There must be many wasps in the beehive, but the space in the storage bag was not suitable for living things. If you just put it in, it wouldn't take long for all the wasps in the beehive to die. Along the way, he had a lot of harvest. Lu Yi took out the 10-point map again and checked his location. After confirming that this area was not in the territory of the Overlord-level beasts, he was relieved. He couldn't help but worry. With such a big harvest, it meant that there were a lot of wasps in this area. With such a large population, it was inevitable that some powerful individuals would be born. If an Overlord-level existence was born, then it would be a disaster. Fortunately, there were no special markings on the 10-point map, which meant that this area was still safe. After plucking 10 beehives, Lu Yi awkwardly discovered that he didn't have enough storage bags. He had killed so many cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge and obtained a large number of storage bags. However, Lu Yi basically opened the storage bags, took the things inside, and placed them together before discarding the empty storage bags. The space in each storage bag was limited, and there was not much difference in size. Each beehive was 10 feet in radius, and some were even larger. A storage bag could only hold 3 beehives. It was rare to come across such good things, so Lu Yi naturally wanted to collect more. Not to mention that the honey in the beehive could be used as a food reserve to restore physical strength and spirit power. It could also speed up the growth of the disciples who had just embarked on the path of cultivation. It was easy to do without a storage bag. He just had to kill some Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators. After making a decision, Lu Yi used the concealment spirit pattern as the core to set up a concealment array to hide his body and aura, and quietly lay dormant. There was no need to deliberately look for traces of the Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators. These guys were like dog-skin plasters that couldn't be shaken off. He just had to wait for a while and they would walk into the trap. In less than 4 hours, there was a rustling sound in the surroundings. A team of more than 20 people from the Myriad Demon's Ridge appeared nearby. These 20 or so people weren't too concentrated, but they weren't too scattered either. They could ensure that even if they stepped into the formation, they wouldn't be caught in one fell swoop. At the same time, they could also support each other in case of an attack. The group of people was very vigilant because no one could guarantee that Lu Ye would not suddenly attack in the next moment. Many Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators had already died in this forest. They didn't want to follow in the footsteps of those people. In this group of people, there was one Heaven Level 9 cultivator. The rest were all Heaven Level 7 and Heaven Level 8 cultivators. Their movements seemed to be centered around the Heaven Level 9 cultivator. Just as everyone was on high alert, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out. The Heaven Rank 9 cultivator's expression froze, and a great sense of danger suddenly appeared in his heart. He hastily turned his head, only to see streaks of light shooting towards him. Since this guy was the strongest in this group, Lu Yi naturally had to deal with him first. Moreover, the distance between them wasn't too far, so it was the best range for a sneak attack. In order to ensure that this person would be killed in one blow, Lu Ye's 9 spirit artifacts were released at the same time, almost instantly using their strongest power. This person's reaction was quick. Looking at his appearance, it was obvious that he was a spirit cultivator. As he activated his spirit chi, a thick spirit chi barrier appeared in front of him. At the same time, his body quickly dodged to the side. Do, Imperial artifact streaks of light crashed into the spirit chi barrier like chasing stars and the moon. The Imperial artifact's sharpness spirit inscriptions instantly shattered the barrier, followed by a burst of hot blood. Enemy attack. The spirit cultivator roared, but as soon as he spoke, his body went limp and fell to the ground, a large amount of blood staining the ground red. Being ambushed by Lu Yi in such a position, perhaps only a Heaven Level 9 body cultivator could survive. The remaining Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators quickly counterattacked. Streaks of Imperial artifacts and spell art streaks of light bombarded the place where Lu Yi was. Lu Yi had already dodged, but giant armor wasn't as fast as Lu Yi. He could only raise an arm, and as his spirit chi and blood chi surged, it turned into a tortoise-shell-like barrier in front of him. Dense sounds rang out, and giant armor's figure couldn't help but retreat. Even as strong as he was, he couldn't withstand a round of attacks from so many heaven-level cultivators. Dense cracks instantly appeared on the tortoise-shell-like barrier. Although his blood chi and spirit chi were constantly mending it, it was still difficult to maintain. While the group of Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators besieged giant armor, Lu Yi didn't stay idle. 9 Imperial artifacts turned into streaks of light, shuttling back and forth in the crowd to divert their attention. He himself also pounced on the nearest enemy with his saber. Kill Lu Yi! Someone shouted. Everyone quickly changed their target and launched their attacks at him. At this moment, not far from the crowd, Yi's figure suddenly appeared. As she activated her spirit chi, a huge golden wheel appeared above her head. Runes flowed on the wheel, and spirit chi surged. The wheel spun, and streaks of golden arc slashes rained down like a storm. It wasn't over yet. Hoopa, who was crouching on top of giant armor's head, roared at the densest part of the crowd. The impact was visible to the naked eye, and the group of Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators felt as if they had been hit by a hammer. For a moment, they felt dizzy and their spirit chi was insufficient. Their attacks slowed down. Even so, Lu Yi was still bleeding profusely and was forced to retreat. If he hadn't seen that the situation was bad and constructed a defensive spirit rune in front of him, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. Giant armor charged forward to support Lu Yi. The tortoise-shell-like barrier only lasted for 3 breaths of time before it shattered. The group of Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators perfectly demonstrated what it meant to have enough ants to kill an elephant. A powerful Heaven Level 9 Law cultivator was killed by Lu Ye's sneak attack in a single blow. However, even if he joined forces with Giant Armor, Yi, and Hu Pe, they couldn't gain any advantage in front of so many myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators. After a cultivator changed to a heaven-level cultivation method, their strength would increase greatly. If they were in the inner circle, Lu Yi and Giant Armor would be able to fight against more than 20 cultivators of similar cultivation. However, they couldn't do so in the core circle. Giant Armor protected Lu Yi as they fought and retreated. Using the cover of the trees, they blocked the attacks from behind and escaped into the depths of the forest. "Don't let him get away." A loud shout rang out, and the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators quickly gave chase. "Be careful of traps," someone else shouted. No one was sure if there was a formation set up by Lu Yi in front of them. One side was fleeing without restraint, while the other side was pursuing with apprehension. How could they catch up? A moment later, they lost sight of Lu Yi and Giant Armor's figures. Their faces were covered in dirt as they stopped. The group of people looked at each other. Their faces were filled with anger and dissatisfaction. This hastily erupted battle had caused them to lose 7 or 8 people. The Heaven Level 9 Dharma cultivator in the lead died especially quickly. He died on the spot almost as soon as Lu Yi attacked. Although Lu Yi seemed to be injured, no one was sure how serious his injuries were. What made them feel even more helpless was that when they returned to the previous battlefield to investigate, they found that the storage bags of the dead cultivators had disappeared at some point. The missing storage bags were naturally taken by Yi. Just as the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were chasing after Lu Yi, she quietly ran back. 2 hours later, beside a mountain stream, Lu Yi took off his blood-soaked clothes and washed his body. With Yi's help, he bandaged his wounds. The current situation was a little troublesome for him. He was unwilling to retreat just like that after being continuously pursued by the myriad Demon's Ridge. However, the risk of counterattacking was not small. Take the battle just now as an example. If not for the fact that Giant Armor was strong enough, they would have died long ago. Not many body cultivators at the Spirit Stream realm would be able to block such a powerful attack. The Giant Armor had blocked 2 of the attacks, and the only reason it had been able to escape in the end was because of the Giant Armor's protection. Even so, he had suffered injuries that were neither light nor heavy. It had to be said that the myriad Devil Ridge's deployment of more than 20 people in a team was indeed difficult for him to break through. If there were enough formation flags and formation bases to set up a formation, it would not be difficult to deal with. Previously, with the help of a formation, he could even kill 70 people. 20 people were nothing. However, the formation flags and formation bases he bought from the Tianji treasure house had been used up. Even the cleverest housewife could not cook without rice. There was not much he could do now. He could only try his best to find a good opportunity to cause as much damage as possible to the myriad Devil Ridge. Tidying up his mood, he cracked the restriction lock on the storage bag and gathered the things inside. After resting for a while, he set off again. He brought back more than a dozen storage bags. This did not mean that they had killed more than a dozen people just now. The main thing was that some cultivators had more than one storage bag on them. With so many storage bags, it should be enough. No matter how many beehives there would always be a limit. Half a day later, Lu Yi and Giant Armor, who had harvested more beehives, were resting. Yi, who had been scouting nearby, suddenly returned and said excitedly, Lu Yi, I found something good." As she said this, she grabbed Lu Ye's hand and pulled him up. "What good thing?" Lu Ye's interest was piqued. Yi had been with him for a long time, so she had seen a lot of things. Anything that could make her so excited must be extraordinary. Moreover, they were deep in the hidden fog mountain. No one knew what kind of treasures were hidden here. "You'll know when you come and see." Under Yi's lead, the group quickly moved in a direction. Soon, Lu Yi revealed a look of surprise because he smelled a very strong floral fragrance. This floral fragrance did not feel like the fragrance of a single flower. Instead, it felt like the fragrance of countless flowers mixed together. The layers were extremely complex. Their field of vision suddenly opened up. The dense forest that had not changed since they entered the hidden fog mountain suddenly became empty. Yi pulled him to a cliff and pointed down at a beautiful field of flowers. Look. Lu Yi looked down and saw a continuous valley with a sea of flowers. It was so beautiful that it did not seem to belong to the mortal world. Chapter 362. What Yi wanted Lu Yi to see wasn't this magnificent sea of flowers that swayed with the wind, but rather, there was a huge, bone-white object in the middle of the sea of flowers, as if it was made of white jade. Even though Lu Yi was mentally prepared, when she saw this thing, she couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Among the endless colorful flowers, this thing that looked like it was made of white jade was particularly eye-catching. A beehive, an extremely huge beehive. It was like a huge palace standing in the center of the valley. Such a huge beehive was unheard of. In the endless sea of flowers in the valley, there were wasps that were 1 to 2 feet long flying around. Looking at the size of the wasps and the colorful patterns on their bodies, the corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. The wasps they had encountered before were only 2 to 3 inches long and were considered very ordinary wasps. However, the wasps in this sea of flowers could already be classified as demon wasps. What was even more frightening was the number of these demon wasps. It was frightening. The honey produced in those ordinary beehives was already coveted. What would the honey produced in this beehive be like? Lu Yi could not help but think. No wonder people said that there were often natural treasures in the deep mountains and forests. Many cultivators liked to explore the mountains after they had a certain cultivation foundation and often found some good things. The beehive in his field of vision was a natural treasure. Although it was true that he had to take some risks to get the honey in the beehive, he had to pay for it to reap the rewards. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi instructed, "Wait for me here. I'll go take a look." Yi immediately said, "I'll go with you." Wait. In fact, Yi was more suitable for this kind of adventure than him because she was a spirit body. Even if she encountered any danger, she could directly escape underground. This was something that no cultivator could compare to. However, this did not mean that Yi would never be in danger. The beehive did not look normal. In addition, there were countless huge demon wasps in the valley. How could Lu Yi let Yi take the risk? If he went alone, even if he encountered danger, he had some confidence that he could escape. Yi pouted her lips, looking unhappy. Lu Yi ignored her and leaped down towards the bottom of the valley. In mid-air, she had already activated the concealment spirit rune to cover her body. In an instant, his figure disappeared, and even his aura was completely restrained. If he hadn't obtained the concealment spirit rune from the talent tree, Lu Yi wouldn't have dared to do such a thing. The 1-foot-long bees didn't look like they were easy to deal with. Lu Yi didn't care about dozens or hundreds of them, but there were more than dozens or hundreds of them in the sea of flowers. Looking down from the sky, the sea of flowers was undulating. Only when he landed did he realize that the flowers and plants here were abnormally tall. Lu Yi didn't know much about pharmacology, so he didn't know if these flowers and plants were medicinal herbs. The concealment spirit rune was maintained, and Lu Yi moved forward silently. From time to time, some demonic bees would fly past him, and his ears would buzz incessantly. After walking for a long time, they finally reached the beehive. Standing in front of the beehive and looking up, Lu Yi felt tiny and insignificant. There were many holes around the beehive, and many diligent demon bees went in and out. Lu Yi searched for a while, then found a relatively large hole and went in. But not long after, a wasp crawled out of the hole. Lu Yi hurriedly shrank his body and stuck close to the side. When the demon bee crawled past him, it seemed to have sensed something. It turned its head and looked in his direction. When it didn't find anything unusual, it continued crawling forward. Along the way, he brushed past many demon bees. The concealment spirit rune's effect was unexpectedly good. These demon bees with low intelligence probably wouldn't have thought that someone would be so bold as to come to their beehive. Not long after, Lu Yi passed through the tunnel and entered the interior of the beehive. The space inside the beehive was obviously larger, and it was filled with the unique fragrance of honey. Just smelling the fragrance was enough to make one feel relaxed and happy. Lu Yi was increasingly certain that the honey produced in this beehive was definitely not comparable to the ones he had harvested before. If the honey was divided into quality, then the ones he had harvested before were undoubtedly inferior, and the ones here were superior. There were even more demon bees in the beehive. Lu Yi had to avoid the demon bees coming and going from time to time as he followed the sweet smell and continued forward. Soon, he found the storage place of the honey. Pieces of pure golden honey were clustered in the interior of the beehive like topaz. Just the smell of it was enough to make one's appetite whet. There were more than a dozen demon bees that were almost the length of a human body guarding the surroundings, crawling back and forth. These guys were much larger than the demon bees outside, and they didn't look like they were to be trifled with. Lu Yi also found something that looked like a groove at the side. The reason why he saw it was mainly because there were a few demon bees that were the length of a human body guarding it. Lu Yi quietly went forward and looked at the groove. His expression changed slightly. The groove wasn't big, only about the size of a bowl. The groove stored about half a bowl's worth of amber golden syrup. Lu Yi wasn't sure what it was, but he felt that it might be the royal jelly of the beehive. It was undeniable that this half a bowl of syrup was much more valuable than the honey. Now that he had found the good stuff, it was time to think of a way to take it away. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi reached into his storage pouch and took out a few spirit stones. With a flick of his finger, he sent the spirit stones flying in all directions. The abnormal movement alerted the patrolling hornets. The hornets crawled towards the source of the movement at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, only the demon bees guarding the royal jelly were left. These demon bees were much more conscientious and didn't seem like they would easily leave their original positions. With no other choice, Lu Yi could only circulate his spirit power. When the weapon box buzzed, 9 streaks of light shot out. With a swishing sound, the demon bees standing still were all decapitated. With this, Lu Ye's figure could no longer be hidden. However, he couldn't care less at this time. He hurriedly circulated his spirit power and wrapped up the amber syrup in the groove, directly putting it into an empty storage pouch. Then, he rushed to the side and wantonly collected the golden crystal-like honey. With a buzzing sound, the demon bees that had been lured away retreated and quickly rushed towards Lu Yi. A moment later, a fiery red streak of light broke through the hive's blockade and soared into the sky. It was Lu Yi, who had activated the flying wing tattoo to escape. At this moment, Lu Yi was in an extremely sorry state. He grimaced in pain as he was wrapped in a stream of light. There were at least a dozen stingers on his body. Each stinger was half a foot long and pierced into his body like sharp blades. Not only that, but the stingers were also highly toxic. Lu Yi clearly felt that his body was somewhat uncoordinated and became very stiff. Even his thoughts were somewhat sluggish. If an ordinary cultivator were to encounter such a situation, they would probably only be able to wait for death. Not to mention other things, just the poison in the stingers was not something a spirit stream realm cultivator could resist. Not to mention, there was a large swarm of demon bees chasing after Lu Yi. Even the demon bees that were collecting honey in the valley were alarmed. On the mountain rock, Giant Armor and Yi watched as a gray fog rose above the sea of flowers. Millions or even tens of millions of demon bees chased after Lu Ye's figure. The scene was so spectacular that it was horrifying. Yi's mind was immediately thrown into chaos. She leaped and was about to chase after Lu Yi when she sensed a movement from the battlefield imprint. She quickly checked and found that it was Lu Yi who sent a message. Run! Yi stopped and called out to Giant Armor. She turned around and went deep into the forest. In the sky, Lu Yi felt a little better. With the innate skill tree's ability to burn the poison, he was not worried that he would be poisoned to death. However, some reactions were inevitable. The buzzing sound in his ears was almost continuous. Lu Yi looked back and was shocked. This time, he really poked a hornet's nest. The demon bees behind him chased after him like a thick black cloud. Lu Yi did not care about pulling out the stingers on his body. He madly urged his spirit force and flapped his wings, quickly flying into the sky. In an instant, he broke through the sea of clouds that sealed the entire hidden fog mountain. The dazzling sunlight spread out, causing Lu Yi to squint slightly. Lu Yi! Someone suddenly shouted. Lu Yi looked in the direction of the voice and saw more than a dozen streaks of light rushing towards him. In the distance, there were even more streaks of light approaching after hearing the voice. The Leaf Eradication League, led by Qin Zheng, had been chasing Lu Yi for the past few days. How could they not guard against Lu Ye's escape? Therefore, not only were there a large number of people chasing after Lu Ye's whereabouts in the forest, but there were also people patrolling the sky at all times. The field of vision in the air was very wide. Lu Yi had only just revealed himself when he was discovered by the Leaf Eradication League. In an instant, those cultivators were like cats that had smelled blood, and they all gathered in this direction. However, what puzzled them was that Lu Yi seemed to be in a sorry state at the moment. There were more than a dozen needle-like things stuck in his body. They did not know what he had encountered. What puzzled them even more was that when Lu Yi saw them, not only did he not dodge, but he also met them head-on. "How dare you!" the leader shouted angrily. He raised his hand and summoned a flying tool to attack Lu Yi. Lu Ye's flying skills were not as good as Giant Armor's, but at this moment, he was not flying on a flying tool. Instead, he was using the Flying Wing Spirit Tattoo. Compared to flying on a flying tool, the speed of the Flying Wing Spirit Tattoo was undoubtedly faster and more flexible. Facing the streaks of light in front of him, Lu Ye's figure moved nimbly. While avoiding the attacks, the distance between them quickly closed. "Be careful!" the leader shouted. They had all heard of Lu Ye's methods, so after getting close to each other, they immediately spread out and were on guard. Unexpectedly, Lu Yi did not intend to attack them. He brushed past them and flew straight into the distance. Chapter 363. Seeing Lu Yi fleeing in panic, all the cultivators except for the Yi Alliance were somewhat confused. Before they could turn around, they heard a buzzing sound in their ears. Someone immediately asked, "What's that sound?" As soon as they spoke, their eyes filled with fear. Where Lu Yi appeared, the clouds churned and wriggled as if something was about to break out. Accompanied by a continuous buzzing sound, their field of vision was filled with a large swarm of wasps. The cultivators from the Leaves League felt their scalps go numb. They finally understood why Lu Yi was running so fast. This guy had somehow provoked a swarm of wasps and was now being chased down. The wasps were extremely fast. As soon as they appeared, they were already in front of them. The cultivators from the Leaves League hurriedly circulated their spirit energy to protect themselves and hurriedly descended. However, they were still a bit too late. Surrounded by the wasps, their protective spirit energy quickly dissipated and they were stung by the stingers. They screamed as they fell from the sky. Wherever the wasps passed, the dozen or so cultivators from the Leaves League disappeared. When the cultivators who were rushing over from afar saw this, they were all greatly shocked and stopped in their tracks. They watched as the dark cloud formed by the demon bees flew away. It was only now that Lu Yi had the time to pull out the stingers from his body. Every time he pulled out a stinger, it brought with it a spray of blood. These stingers were very long and had penetrated deep into his flesh. Fortunately, they didn't injure his vitals. After pulling out a dozen stingers, Lu Yi looked back and saw that the swarm of wasps behind him was like maggots that couldn't be shaken off. What made him feel even more helpless was that these wasps were even faster than his normal flying speed. Fortunately, he was using the Flying Wing Spirit tattoo, so as long as he had a bit of time, he would be able to shake off the swarm of wasps. It was scary but not dangerous. Just as he was thinking this, a strange feeling came from the Flying Wing tattoo on his back. When he circulated his spirit energy, it became somewhat sluggish. Lu Ye's expression turned grave. He realized that he was in trouble. This flying wing tattoo was something that Madame Yun had personally inscribed on him before he had participated in the Battle of Lingxi. Back then, Madame Yun had said that this temporary tattoo could only last for a total of 6 hours. In other words, after this time, the tattoo would lose its effect. After such a long period of time, Lu Yi had been using the flying wing tattoo on and off, and the time added together was almost up. Yang Kai himself was faintly aware of this, so after breaking through to the 8th Order and being able to use Imperial Flying Artifact, he rarely used his flying wing tattoo unless it was absolutely necessary. After all, it could be used to save his life at a critical moment. But he didn't expect that at this juncture today, the flying wing tattoos would reach their limit. Left with no choice, Lu Yi could only summon his spirit boat and switch to flight mode before the flying wing tattoo lost its effect. Only by activating the flight spirit rune on his spirit boat could he barely maintain his previous speed. He took out a few spirit pills and stuffed them into his mouth. Then, he took out a bottle of resting fruit wine and drank it. The spirit chi in his body was quickly restored. Using the flying wing inscription consumed a lot of spirit power. At this moment, maintaining the wind travel spirit inscription on the spirit boat consumed a lot of spirit power. Therefore, Lu Yi had to ensure that his spirit power could last. As they chased and fled, they kept moving forward. After an hour, Lu Yi finally shook off the swarm of bees behind him. He let out a long sigh, stopped flying, and found a safe place to rest. While Lu Yi was resting, the cultivators of the Leaves Union received the news that Lu Yi was being chased by a swarm of bees and had escaped. This made the cultivators of the Leaves Union very angry. They had been chasing Lu Yi for so many days in the hidden fog mountain and had lost hundreds of people, but in the end, Lu Yi still managed to escape. How could they be willing to accept this? Although they didn't know why Lu Yi was being chased by a swarm of bees, that guy had many tricks up his sleeve and his Imperial Flying Artifact flying speed, so there was a high chance that he could escape safely. Now that the Leaves Union had lost track of Lu Yi, there was no need to continue the chase. After communicating with each other for a while, they had no choice but to accept the result of this operation's failure. Streams of light soared into the sky and shuttled through the fog sea, preparing to leave. However, at that moment, another piece of news came. Lu Yi was running back with the swarm of bees behind him. The cultivators who encountered him couldn't avoid him and lost more than a dozen people. It could be said that they were in an extremely sorry state. The cultivators of the Leaves Union were dumbfounded. They really didn't know how Lu Yi had provoked the swarm of bees to chase after him so relentlessly. However, this was a good thing for them. Originally, they were the only ones chasing Lu Yi, but now they had a swarm of bees to help them. This made the cultivators of the Leaves Union very happy, and they all sighed with emotion. Although they had lost some people to the swarm of bees, they had lost a lot of people during this time. As long as they could kill Lu Yi, their previous losses would be worth it. After a simple discussion, the cultivators of the Leaves Union, who were about to leave, decided to stay. Even if they couldn't kill Lu Yi with their own hands, they wanted to see him die. If they could cooperate with the swarm of bees, it would be even better. At this moment, Lu Yi was really speechless. Perhaps it was because he had killed some bees in the hive before, or perhaps there was some undetectable aura left on his body, but even though he had shaken off the swarm of bees before, he hadn't rested for a moment before the swarm of bees chased after him again. While escaping, Lu Yi changed his clothes from inside to outside and even washed his body several times with water, but he still couldn't completely shake off the swarm of bees. If he could continue to enchant the spirit boat with flight spirit runes, Lu Yi had some confidence that he could shake off the swarm of bees. However, even if he was already a Heaven Grade 7 cultivator, he couldn't bear such consumption. Enchantment of a spirit boat consumed a lot of spiritual energy, even more than when he activated the flight spirit runes. With his spiritual energy reserves, he couldn't maintain it for a long time. Since he couldn't shake off the swarm of bees by flying, Lu Yi could only turn back. He wanted to borrow the hands of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators to block the swarm of bees and cause some damage to them, but it couldn't change the current situation. Helpless, he could only fly through the dense forest, using the natural barrier of the forest to slow down the swarm of bees. While running, he suddenly encountered a group of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. The moment they met, both sides were startled. However, Lu Yi quickly took out an item from his storage bag and threw it at the other party. It was a 3-meter wide hive. Someone attacked and blew up the hive. A sweet fragrance immediately spread out, and the fragments of the hive flew in all directions. Smelling the sweet fragrance, many of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators' expressions changed, and they gradually became frightened. Everyone knew that Lu Yi was being chased by a swarm of bees. Originally, if they met here, as long as they could delay Lu Yi's escape speed, the swarm of bees would catch up and Lu Yi would be in danger. No one expected that he would throw out a hive first. A buzzing sound quickly approached Lu Yi from behind. When he looked up, he saw a dense dark cloud between the trees. Lu Yi, who had thrown out the hive, had already escaped from the side, leaving them to face the terror of the swarm of bees. "Run!" Someone shouted and immediately took out his flying spirit boat and soared into the sky. There were also people who turned around and ran back. For a moment, the scene was chaotic. The swarm of wasps chasing after Lu Yi suddenly split into several groups. Most of the wasps continued to chase after Lu Yi like maggots, while the few that split off went after the fleeing myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators. A moment later, miserable screams rang out. Not only were the fleeing myriad Devil Ridge cultivators unable to escape, but even the cultivators flying in the air were caught by the bees. With the strength of the core cultivators, dozens or hundreds of these bees wouldn't pose any threat to them. However, if there were too many of them, it would be difficult for them to resist. Once the protective spirit boat and spirit power were broken, the stingers would pierce into the body, and the bee venom would seep into the body. The fleeing Lu Yi's eyes suddenly lit up. When he was being chased by the swarm of bees, he had been thinking about a question. How did these bees find his location? He had changed his clothes and washed his body clean. All that was left was an aura that he couldn't detect, such as the unique sweetness of honey. When plundering the golden honey in the beehive, it was inevitable that he would be contaminated with that aura. It was very difficult to remove this aura in a short period of time using normal methods. Throwing a beehive at the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators was just an experiment. Anyway, he had many of these ordinary beehives, so throwing one was nothing. However, the results surprised him. From the looks of it, being relentlessly chased by such a swarm of bees didn't seem to be a bad thing. There were more than 30 people in the myriad Devil Ridge team just now. Originally, he couldn't compete with them with his strength, but he could easily kill them with a borrowed knife. He just didn't know how many such teams there were. Lu Yi thought of Giant Beetle and Yi again. He quickly sent a message out, telling them to evacuate first and that he would find a chance to meet up with them later. These bees were really crazy now. It was very dangerous for Giant Beetle and the others to stay nearby. Not long after, Yi replied, telling him to be careful. Now that he didn't have to worry about Giant Beetle and Yi's safety, Lu Yi didn't have to worry about anything. Although traveling through the dense forest was much slower than flying on a magic tool, there were natural obstacles and barriers, so the situation was better than flying on a magic tool. However, he didn't dare to stop for even a moment. the situation suddenly became even more chaotic. In the hidden fog mountain, Lu Yi led the swarm of bees everywhere. Every myriad Devil Ridge team that encountered him suffered. After suffering several losses and losing hundreds of people, the cultivators of the Yi League had to admit that it was no longer suitable to stay. Otherwise, their losses would only be greater. Helpless and unwilling, the cultivators of the Yi League flew into the air and prepared to evacuate the hidden fog mountain. As for Lu Yi, they would let him fight with the swarm of bees and dogs. Being chased by such a swarm of bees, it was impossible for a Heaven Rank 7 cultivator to survive. Chapter 364. Less than half a day later, Lu Yi noticed that something was wrong. There seemed to be no cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge in this area. Not only that, but even the monsters that originally lived here seemed to have sensed the danger and fled. The pursuit of the swarm was endless and relentless. If it weren't for Lu Ye's talent tree and gluttonous meal to continuously replenish his consumed spirit power, he wouldn't have been able to hold on. The honey that he had plundered from the huge beehive was a great help. The good grade honey was more effective at recovering physical strength and spirit power than the previous inferior honey. At this time, he couldn't care less about whether he would be contaminated. If he didn't replenish his physical strength, he wouldn't be able to continue escaping. Lu Yi tried to fly several times, but even if he didn't care about the consumption of spirit power and continued to maintain the wind spirit tattoo, he could only temporarily shake off the swarm. Once he stopped for a moment, the swarm would quickly catch up. There was no end to it. Now, if he wanted to get rid of the swarm, he could only take an unconventional approach. The map showed that in the depths of the hidden fog mountain, there was a land of fire covering thousands of kilometers. The environment was extremely harsh and could be said to be one of the most dangerous places in the Spirit Stream battlefield. Logically speaking, such a harsh place should be barren, but in fact, although the land of fire was unbearably hot, there was no lack of vitality in the heat. As a result, although the land of fire wasn't lush, it wasn't a barren land either. Moreover, that place was rich in fire attribute spirit plants and minerals. When he first decided to enter the hidden fog mountain, Lu Yi discovered this land of fire. He thought that after dealing with the people from the myriad Devil Ridge who were chasing him, he would go to the land of fire to take a look. After all, the talent tree could devour ownerless things with scorching energy, so he might be able to gain something from the land of fire. Now that the cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge were gone and a group of even more troublesome things was behind him, Lu Yi had no choice but to go to the land of fire. As long as the environment there was harsh enough, it could stop the swarm for him. Of course, the premise was that he could withstand it. However, he was a Heaven Rank 7 cultivator, and his physique was comparable to a body cultivator of the same rank. His endurance should be stronger than the swarm. After making a decision, Lu Yi followed the map and headed straight for the land of fire. During this period, he even tried to fly in the air several times in an attempt to shake off the swarm of bees behind him, but all of them ended in failure. After 2 days of walking and stopping, the tall trees disappeared from his field of vision. The vegetation was obviously much thinner, and there was a faint scorching heat flowing in the surrounding environment. They had arrived at the outskirts of the land of fire. Lu Yi had been on the run for the past 2 days, tormenting him greatly. Now that he had arrived at the land of fire and confirmed that the environment here was similar to what was recorded on the map, a glimmer of hope appeared in his heart. As they continued forward, the vegetation became even sparser. There were no natural barriers or obstructions, which caused the speed of the pursuing bees to increase greatly. Lu Yi had no choice but to summon his air transportation spiritual tool and fly a few meters above the ground. The further they went, the hotter the environment became. Even the ground began to dry up. However, it was indeed as recorded on the map. The scorching heat here was not the kind of scorching heat that had no vitality. Instead, it contained a strange vitality. If not for this, ordinary spiritual plants would not be able to survive in such an environment. There were rumors that there was a supreme treasure in the land of fire. This was the source of the strange environment here. Over the years, many cultivators had been attracted to the land of fire to search for treasures. However, they either returned empty-handed or their corpses were left to rot in the wilderness. One had to know that the land of fire was marked as a danger zone on the map sold by the Tianji Merchant Union. Any location marked as a danger zone was a forbidden zone for cultivators. The danger here didn't just come from the environment itself, but also from factors outside of the environment. For example, demon beasts. A special environment like the land of fire attracted many fire attribute demon beasts to live here. Many of them were very powerful, and ordinary cultivators were no match for them. For example, the fire lizard that Lu Yi encountered now. This thing crawled on the ground and blended in with its surroundings. It wasn't inferior to the most outstanding ghost cultivators. When Lu Yi flew across the sky, a long tongue popped out and stuck to the flying spirit boat. If Lu Yi hadn't reacted quickly and sent out several imperial weapons from the weapon box to slash down, the boat would have been torn down by the tongue. The fire lizard's tongue was very flexible. Lu Ye's weapon couldn't completely cut it off. After feeling the pain, the lizard opened its mouth and spat out raging flames. Lu Yi immediately flew up and hurriedly dodged. As a result, the bees chasing him were unlucky. Under the raging flames, at least a few dozen of them died. More and more fire lizards showed up in the vicinity. They spurted out balls of flame and swarms of demon bees fell down like raindrops. This scene made Lu Yi raise his eyebrows. The resentment in his heart over the past few days was finally alleviated. However, these bees weren't to be trifled with. The hundreds of Lu Yi Union cultivators that were stung to death by them were a lesson learned. These guys weren't very intelligent, but they were very vengeful. Lu Yi only went to the huge beehive to plunder some honey and royal jelly, but they chased him all the way here. The fire lizard actually dared to slaughter these bees. How could it have a good ending? The buzzing sounds became even more intense as the overwhelming number of demon wasps descended. The flames that they spat out were quickly extinguished. Accompanied by hissing sounds, the fire lizards revealed themselves one after another as they lay stiffly on the ground, twitching from time to time. After the bee swarm whistled past, only a dozen fire lizard corpses were left. Fire lizards were only demon beasts in the periphery and weren't very strong. The deeper one went, the more fire attribute demon beasts they encountered, and the stronger they were. These demon beasts usually stayed in their own territories and occasionally went out to hunt. No one would have thought that while they were sitting at home, disaster would come from the sky. Perhaps because they had suffered at the hands of the fire lizards, wherever the bee swarm passed, regardless of whether the demon beasts provoked them or not, they would be stung until their bodies swelled and they fell to the ground dead. For a time, the demon beasts in the land of fire suffered heavy casualties. It was unknown if they were affected by the scorching environment, but the bees seemed to have lost their minds at this moment and madly retaliated against all the creatures around them. Perhaps their simple intelligence had already realized that Lu Yi, the thief who had stolen their treasures, was about to escape. Half a day later, Lu Yi had already entered the depths of the land of fire. At this point, the surrounding heat was no longer something ordinary cultivators could withstand. The high temperature caused the surrounding environment to become extremely distorted, and the ground showed an abnormal dark red color. Lu Yi urged his spiritual power to protect his body, but he was still sweating profusely. The sweat evaporated as soon as it appeared, causing his clothes to become hard and stick to his body. It was extremely uncomfortable. This was the result of him having a Heaven Grade 7 cultivation base and cultivating a fire attribute cultivation method. If not for this, he would not have been able to hold on. At this time, the pursuing bees had also suffered heavy losses. Along the way, they were killed by the demon beasts they encountered along the way. The remaining bees seemed to have lost their vitality. Not to mention their speed was greatly reduced, many of the weaker bees had already fallen behind. There were even more bees whose wings were damaged by the high temperature and fell to the ground. Then, their limbs were melted by the terrifying heat on the ground. After losing their vitality, they completely turned into fireballs. Lu Yi turned his head to look back and his heart settled. He knew that coming to the land of fire was the right choice. Otherwise, he really would not have been able to shake off this swarm of bees. After flying forward for a while, the pursuing movements behind him gradually subsided. Lu Yi looked back again and saw that the few remaining bees had stopped moving forward. Instead, they hovered in place and quietly looked at him. After a while, the remaining bees turned around and returned along the original path. Lu Yi watched them leave. He had finally shaken off this group of plagues. His heart relaxed as boundless exhaustion washed over him. The spirit boat that was hovering in the air swayed slightly. Lu Yi hurriedly took out some good quality honey from his storage bag to replenish his physical strength and spiritual energy. He also took out a few spirit pills and swallowed them. He did not retreat, nor did he continue forward. Lu Yi pressed down on the flying light and landed. After being chased for a few days, he did not have a good rest. Although the current environment was bad, at least he was not in a hurry to be chased. He could rest for a while and recover. The first reason why he did not retreat was that he was afraid that the swarm of bees would be guarding him outside. After getting rid of them with great difficulty, Lu Yi did not want to deal with them for the rest of his life. The second reason was the abnormality of the talent tree. Since half a day ago, he had faintly felt that the talent tree was a little strange. This feeling was very similar to when he used the talent tree to devour the earth core fire. Looking inside, he could even see that the talent tree that was rooted in his source aperture had grown some roots and was floating around. It looked like the talent tree wanted to devour something, but could not find the place. This made Lu Yi certain that there was a fire attribute treasure in the land of fire. Moreover, it was a treasure that could be devoured by the talent tree. This was very attractive to Lu Yi. During these days, the earth core fire that the talent tree devoured was bought from the Tianji treasury by spending merit points. A portion of earth core fire was worth 200 merit points. For any cultivator, 200 merit points was not a small amount. Lu Yi had spent around 20,000 merit points on it. If he could find a fire attribute treasure that the talent tree could devour here, it would be equivalent to saving a lot of merit points for Lu Yi. This was naturally worth exploring. As time passed, Lu Yi slowly recovered. Moreover, the surrounding heat also lessened a lot. Lu Yi knew that it was not that the heat had lessened, but that he had slowly adapted to the environment here. His body had a certain degree of resistance to the environment here. He did not notice it before mainly because he was going too deep. He had flown in using a tool. As he went deeper and deeper, the surrounding environment accelerated too quickly, causing his body to not be able to adapt in time. Now that he had stopped, this adaptability was slowly showing. Realizing this, Lu Yi gave up on the idea of using a tool to go deeper. Instead, he walked forward step by step. Chapter 365. The scorching sun hung high in the sky, covering an area of several thousand li in flames. Lu Yi took off his shirt, bare-chested, and walked forward step by step with the Pan Mountain saber in hand. He didn't use his spirit power to protect himself, allowing the scorching heat to corrode his body to increase his resistance to the harsh environment. At the same time, he could directly sense the limits of his body's endurance. Back when he was a slave miner in Evil Moon Valley, Lu Ye's body was still somewhat thin due to the intense labor and lack of food and clothing. However, after embarking on the path of cultivation, his physique slowly strengthened, especially after he obtained the scale armor in the Dragon Spring. The strengthening of his physique was visible to the naked eye. At this moment, his naked upper body was full of strong muscles and crisscrossed scars left behind by sharp weapons. These scars were the marks of his bloody battles with his enemies. In fact, After returning to the Jade Blood sect from the inner circle for a month, his second senior sister had already used medical methods to remove the remaining scars on his body. However, cultivators often fought and killed others, so it was normal for new scars to appear after the old scars disappeared. Sweat slid down his spine and chest and quickly evaporated. Even a Heaven Grade 7 cultivator like Lu Yi needed to take out a water sack from time to replenish his body's water. He didn't walk very fast. This way, the surrounding environment could constantly temper his body and strengthen his body's resistance to the scorching heat. Therefore, even though he didn't walk very fast, he never stopped walking. Occasionally, he would stop and fight with the monster beasts he encountered along the way. The monster beasts that lived here were all fire attribute. They were attracted by the special environment because their growth rate here was much faster than in other places. The deeper he went, the stronger the monster beasts he encountered. Fortunately, Lu Yi didn't encounter any that were difficult to deal with. The Yao beasts killed were not wasted. The blood of the Yao beasts was collected properly. Some of the special parts of the Yao beasts could be used as materials for artifact forging. The fur of the Yao beasts could be sold. Even the flesh of the Yao beasts was a great supplement for cultivators. Hoopa liked to eat these the most. Lu Yi contacted Yi and found out that Giant Beetle had taken her and Hoopa out of Hidden Fog Mountain and was hiding in a secluded place. Lu Yi told them to be careful and to meet up with them once she was done with her business here. Night fell and the full moon rose into the sky. However, the Land of Fire did not change much because of the arrival of the night. It was still so hot and unbearable. He kept moving forward. On the morning of the third day after escaping from the swarm of bees, Lu Yi had already ventured deep into the Land of Fire. Judging from the map, he was less than 200 li away from the core of the Land of Fire. Even with Lu Ye's powerful physique, it was difficult for him to withstand the pressure. There was a limit to how much one could increase one's body's resistance to the scorching heat. Since last night, Lu Yi had been circulating his spiritual energy to protect himself, and only then was he able to barely make it this far. At this point, even with the protection of spiritual energy, it was difficult to continue forward. At this location, there were no longer any demonic beasts around. Even those fire attribute demonic beasts could not withstand the harsh environment here. The name of the ominous grounds, the forbidden zone for cultivators, was not just for show. This caused Lu Yi to be somewhat unwilling. If there really was a fire attribute treasure in the Land of Fire, it would definitely be in the center. If he was really too far away, he would not force it, but now he was less than 200 li away from the center. If he gave up here, all his previous perseverance would be in vain. However, he had indeed reached his limit. If he continued to persist, he would only be asking for trouble. He examined himself, wanting to see if there was anything he could use. After looking around, it seemed that the only thing he could use was his innate skill tree. The innate skill tree could devour fire attribute energy. If he could borrow its power, resisting the scorching heat here should not be a problem. But the key was that this thing was rooted in his source aperture. It seemed illusory yet not illusory, real yet not real. It would never appear, so how could he borrow its power? After thinking for a while, Lu Yi realized a problem. Since the environment here was so harsh, it meant that there was a lot of fire attribute spiritual energy here. It was just that it could not be seen with the naked eye. This was clearly within the range of the innate skill tree's ability to devour. Why would he need the innate skill tree to protect himself? As long as he urged the innate skill tree to devour the scorching heat around him, wouldn't it be fine? Thinking of this, Lu Yi suddenly realized that his understanding of the innate skill tree all this time seemed to have fallen into a misunderstanding. If this was really the case, then he would have a huge advantage when facing enemies who cultivated fire attribute cultivation methods in the future. With a thought, he urged the power of the innate skill tree. In the next instant, the roots of the innate skill tree in his source aperture suddenly increased by a lot. Then, they all disappeared, as if probing into an unknown space. Lu Yi vaguely sensed something and immediately urged the insight spirit rune to enhance his eyes. Looking down at his hands, the scene in his field of vision made him slightly startled. His field of vision enhanced by the insight spirit rune was different from normal vision. This was because the insight spirit rune could see some things that the naked eye could not see, such as the flow of spiritual energy. Under the enhancement of the insight spirit rune, the world Lu Yi saw was colorful. These were the brilliant colors of spiritual energy of various attributes. At this moment, the scene in his field of vision was fiery red. There were no other colors. This was because the fire attribute's spiritual energy here was too rich. The spiritual energy flowing on his hands was also fiery red, mixed with a faint golden color. This was because Lu Ye's spiritual energy was mainly fire and supplemented by metal. However, on the spiritual energy flowing on his hands, there were countless root-like things that were constantly swaying with the flow of spiritual energy. Those roots were clearly the roots of the innate skill tree. Not only on his hands, but also everywhere in his field of vision. At first glance, Lu Yi looked like a furry humanoid monster. In the past, when he urged the innate skill tree to devour the core fire, Lu Yi really did not urge the insight spirit rune to observe. It was only now that he understood how the innate skill tree devoured the core fire. It obviously used his body as a transit, using the roots as a bridge. No wonder every time the innate skill tree devoured the core fire, he could not feel the heat of the core fire, even if he held it in his hands. This was because his hands were covered with invisible roots of the innate skill tree. The innate skill tree's devouring showed results. The surrounding heat quickly subsided, and the sudden change in the environment gave Lu Yi an unreal sense of coolness. Now that his thoughts were verified, Lu Yi took large strides forward. Urging the innate skill tree like this did not consume much spiritual energy, but it consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Lu Yi had already clearly felt this, so he had to speed up. It would not be good for him to drag it out for too long. After walking for a while and confirming that there were no problems, Lu Yi simply took out the spirit boat and flew forward. The speed of flying was much faster than walking, and dozens of miles were quickly passed. Lu Yi, who was flying in the air, suddenly stopped and stood on the spirit boat and looked down. On the dark red ground below, a figure was crawling obliquely. Her exquisite and graceful curves were curvaceous, and her snow-white skin formed an extremely sharp contrast with the dark red ground. She was only wearing a corset made of animal skin on her upper body and a short skirt made of animal skin on her lower body. Not only was her slender figure extremely beautiful, but it also gave people a sense of explosive power. There was actually someone here. Lu Yi was very surprised. Since yesterday, he had not even seen a single demonic beast, but he actually encountered a person here. She should not be dead yet because Lu Yi could feel her vitality. This person had probably also come to the land of fire to search for treasures. To be able to survive the harsh environment here, one could imagine how strong she was. However, looking at the other party's posture at this moment, it was obvious that she had reached her limit. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to crawl here without moving. Just as Lu Yi was about to activate the insight spirit rune to observe the other party's cultivation level, the woman suddenly straightened up, and a pair of red eyes coldly met Lu Ye's eyes. Lu Yi immediately felt that something was wrong. Without any hesitation, the spirit boat quickly rose into the air, and an afterimage swept below and landed not far away. The spirit boat shook slightly, almost throwing Lu Yi off. Lu Yi turned his head and looked to the side. The woman, who was crawling on the ground just now, was now on both hands and feet. Her body was burning with flame-like spirit energy, and her fiery red hair fluttered. She bared her teeth at Lu Yi, looking like a cheetah ready to pounce on its prey. The other party's violent spirit energy and dazzling spirit light gave Lu Yi a fright. He had not seen such a resplendent spirit light even on Feng Yuechan and Li Baxian. And the other party's spirit energy. It was not spirit energy, but boiling demonic energy. This woman was a demonic beast, and an overlord-level great demonic beast. A great sense of danger grew in his heart. Lu Ye's heart suddenly contracted, and a stabbing pain came from his chest. His powerful mind allowed him to sense where the other party was about to attack. Almost at the instant he sensed the danger, Lu Yi instinctively constructed a defensive spirit rune on his chest. His vision blurred, and the demoness, who was still on the ground, had already pounced in front of him. Her hand formed a claw and clawed at his heart. With a cracking sound, the sturdy defensive spirit rune was pierced by the sharp nails, and cracks appeared. Lu Yi could even feel the pain of the other party's sharp claws piercing his chest. If there was no defensive spirit rune to block this attack, his heart would definitely be dug out. At the same time, 9 streams of light shot out from the weapon box at Lu Ye's waist, attacking the demoness in front of him. The demoness withdrew her hand, and her body spun lightly. She did not make any movements, but while dodging all the attacks, her long leg was like a whip, lashing down in the air. Lu Yi unsheathed the Pan Mountain saber at his waist and slashed at the other party's leg whip with the double sharpness spirit rune. The saber slashed at empty air. The other party changed her move extremely quickly, probably because she sensed the sharpness of the saber. She changed from a whip to a kick at the last moment. Her speed was so fast that it was hard to react to. Chapter 366. The Banshee's kick landed on Lu Ye's chest, almost knocking him off the spirit boat. If Lu Yi didn't have a flying spiritual artifact, he would definitely die in the face of such an overlord-level great demon. Therefore, after suffering that kick, Lu Yi almost instinctively hooked his feet onto his spirit boat and flew out with the spirit boat. After stabilizing himself with great difficulty, Lu Yi hastily looked around, but didn't see the Banshee anywhere. Sensing danger from above, Lu Yi quickly looked up. With the scorching sun in the sky, the Banshee's figure quickly swooped down from above. The 9 spirit tools that flew out turned into streams of light and attacked the Banshee head-on. Accompanied by a series of clanking sounds, all the spirit tools were bounced off by the Banshee's claws. This scene caused Lu Ye's heart to palpitate. He truly understood the gap between himself and a powerful great demon. He had seen 2 overlord-level Yao beasts. One was Xiao Hui in the encampment, and the other was Ying Jiao he had encountered in the Sky Pillar sect's territory. However, regardless of whether it was Xiao Hui or Ying Jiao, Lu Yi had never fought them head-on. This Banshee was the first great demon beast he had ever faced. With his Tian Qi cultivation, he had recently killed quite a few Sky Tier 9 cultivators. However, even Sky Tier 9 cultivators were nothing in front of a powerful great demon beast. The so-called overlord level was an existence that could dominate the entire battlefield. This hasty encounter wasn't because the Banshee had ambushed him. She had clearly sensed someone approaching while resting and had attacked. Lu Yi felt that he was unlucky. If he hadn't been curious and ran back to investigate, he wouldn't have encountered such a situation. Facing the Banshee, Lu Yi had nowhere to run. He could only take a deep breath and raise his mountain coiling saber. A streak of light flashed across the blade, increasing its sharpness. A straight stab. This was a stab Lu Yi made at the maximum distance possible. It was also a stab that contained all of his strength. He had high hopes for this stab. However, the Banshee only tilted her neck slightly, and the sharp edge of the mountain coiling blade left a bloody gash on her fair neck. Before Lu Yi could cut her, the Banshee kicked her in the chest. Lu Ye's entire chest went numb. His body froze for a moment before crashing to the ground. The spirit boat under his feet could not withstand such a huge impact and broke apart. Boom! A crater appeared in the dark red ground, and Lu Yi crashed to the ground. This wasn't the end of it. The demoness pounced on him like a maggot, clawing at him. Dust flew into the air, and when the ground cracked, Lu Yi had already gotten up and fled. His legs were augmented by flying spirit tattoos, and his mouth and nose were full of blood. He had never been in such a sorry state before. The difference in strength was simply too great. He was no match for Zhang Xian at all. His air transportation spiritual artifact had also been destroyed. Lu Yi felt the aura of death chasing after him like an invisible beast. Gradually, the feeling of his life hanging by a thread disappeared. Lu Yi hastily turned his head to look back and found that the demoness was actually standing in the same place, quietly looking at him with those scarlet eyes. She didn't chase after him, and even nimbly retreated a few dozen meters, returning to the spot where Lu Yi had first discovered her. After confirming that the other party had no intention of pursuing him, Lu Yi breathed a sigh of relief. Soon, he realized that it wasn't that the other party didn't want to kill him, but that she couldn't. In the land of fire, the deeper one went, the more intense the environment became. With Lu Ye's strength, he could only reach a distance of 200 meters from the center. Although this demoness was an overlord-level existence, she also had her limits. Her current limit was her current position. If she went any deeper, even she wouldn't be able to withstand it. This was why she had retreated a few dozen meters. Realizing this, Lu Yi felt completely relieved. From a distance of nearly 100 meters, Lu Yi looked down at his chest. His heart was a bloody mess, having been pierced by the demoness' sharp claws. Fortunately, the wound wasn't deep, and his chest was slightly sunken. He raised his hand and pressed on it. His ribs hurt, most likely some bone fractures. The other party's kick was too powerful. Lu Yi sheathed the mountain plate saber beside him and put away the spirit artifacts in his weapon case. Then, he took out a few healing pills and swallowed them. After adjusting his breathing for a while and confirming that he was fine, Lu Yi grabbed the mountain plate saber and walked toward the demoness. Compared to before, the demoness' scarlet eyes were much less malicious. Instead, they were filled with curiosity, as if she was wondering how this creature, who was much weaker than her, could withstand the harsh environment and walk further than her. She tilted her head and sized up Lu Yi, her eyes full of scrutiny. When he was about 60 meters away from the demoness, Lu Yi expressionlessly stared at her. In the next instant, his weapon case trembled, and 9 streaks of light shot toward the demoness. If the other party didn't dare to go too deep, then no matter how strong she was, she would still be a target. After seeing how nimble the demoness was, Lu Yi didn't dare to fight her in close combat. However, with the help of a spirit artifact, he didn't have to worry about this. After being beaten up for no reason and almost losing his life, how could Lu Yi just let it go? The 9 streaks of light arrived in front of the demoness at almost the same time. Under Lu Ye's precise control, they attacked from different angles. Then, Lu Yi saw what it meant to move like lightning. The demoness didn't move at all. Her claws turned into a series of afterimages. After a series of clanging sounds, more than half of the 9 streaks of light were knocked away, not hurting the demoness at all. Not only that, but 3 spirit artifacts were caught in the demoness' hands. They struggled like living creatures, but they couldn't break free. The demoness seemed to have seen spirit artifacts for the first time. She looked down at the struggling objects in her hands. The corners of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. He could accept that the other party dodged or even knocked away his spirit artifacts. After all, she was an overlord-level existence. Her strength had reached the limit of what the spirit stream battlefield could accommodate. However, it was a little awkward to take away his 3 spirit artifacts like this. Under the other party's restraint, it was wishful thinking for Lu Yi to take back his spirit artifacts. Trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. With a thought, the 3 spirit artifacts that the demoness was playing with flashed with brilliance, and explosive spirit inscriptions instantly formed. Since returning from the Immortal Essence City, Lu Yi had been able to add spirit inscriptions to his spirit artifacts. However, he hadn't tried to add explosive spirit inscriptions to them. He had only used these spirit inscriptions as the core to set up an explosive array before. The demoness' perception was undoubtedly very sharp. Just as the explosive spirit inscriptions formed, she raised her hand and threw the 3 spirit artifacts out. With 3 loud bangs, the 3 spirit artifacts lost most of their spirituality. Their luster dimmed, and their internal restrictions were destroyed. They lost their original functions. Lu Yi did a quick calculation. Ever since he had met this demoness, he had lost a spirit boat and 3 imperial weapons. He had even been beaten to the point of having his bones broken. What a loss! Without any hesitation, he turned around and left. The difference in strength was too great. Lu Yi had already given up on killing the demoness. The Heavenly Secret Business Alliance had caused him a lot of trouble. The map clearly stated that there were only 3 Overlord-level demonic beasts in the hidden Fog Mountain. However, there was a 4th one in the Land of Fire. This was obviously a mistake in the information. It definitely wasn't his fault. Wait! The demoness suddenly spoke. Her voice was a little hoarse, but there was a hint of charm in it. Lu Yi was a little surprised. He didn't expect her to be able to speak. This demoness wasn't a demonic cultivator. Lu Yi had specially observed her before. She didn't have any spirit artifacts, nor did she have any signs of cultivation. She fought with her instincts and demonic energy. Real demonic cultivators were different from her. Demonic cultivators lived in perfect harmony with the human clan. They took the path of enlightened apertures cultivation. Many sects had demonic cultivators as disciples. They were no different from the human clan except for some slight differences in appearance. This demoness could be seen as a demonic cultivator. Demonic cultivators were different from demonic cultivators. The former's life and cultivation were more primitive, similar to demonic beasts. Lu Yi didn't know what the demoness' true form was because there weren't many traces of demonic cultivation left on her. However, judging from her nimble body, her true form shouldn't be too big. During the battle, the demoness didn't speak and was so curious about the spirit artifacts. Lu Yi thought she hadn't come into contact with humans. Now, it seemed that wasn't the case. At least she could speak. Lu Yi stopped and turned around to look back. Their eyes met. The demoness spoke again. Bring me the thing inside. What's inside? A ball of fire. I can feel it. It's a very powerful ball of fire. From the looks of it, the demoness also wanted to enter the center of the Land of Fire to search for the legendary fire-type treasure. Although she was unable to reach the center with her strength, she could still feel the existence of the ball of fire. A treasure that even an overlord-level existence coveted couldn't be bad. Lu Yi thought of Ying Jiao. Ying Jiao was extremely eager for his scales. It seemed that the ball of fire in the depths of the Land of Fire was as useful to the demoness as the scales were to Ying Jiao. He turned around and continued moving forward. I'll wait for you here. The demoness' voice came from behind. Lu Yi pretended not to hear it. He had traveled a long way here for the same goal as the demoness. Not only did she beat him up, but she also wanted him to bring the thing out to her. She must be dreaming. A ball of fire. It looked like that ball of fire was the source of this Land of Fire. Lu Yi was very curious. Just what kind of ball of fire was it that could turn an area of thousands of miles into such a dangerous place? While moving forward, Lu Yi rummaged through his storage bag. His original spirit boat had been destroyed, so he had to quickly refine another flight-type spirit artifact. The previous spirit boat was obtained from sky-bearing sect's Yuan Guang. Yuan Guang was only an ordinary 9th-order cultivator, so the quality of his spirit boat was mediocre. Recently, Lu Yi had killed so many heaven-grade cultivators, so naturally, he had obtained a lot of flight-type spirit artifacts. Among them, Lu Yi chose a spirit artifact that was similar in shape to the previous spirit boat and pushed his spirit chi to refine the seal on it. With Lu Ye's current cultivation and the purity of his spirit chi, it wouldn't take him much effort to refine such a spirit artifact. After a stick of incense worth of time, another flight-type spirit artifact appeared under Lu Ye's feet. Compared to the previous one, this one was undoubtedly of better quality. Boosted in flight, the spirit boat turned into a stream of light and flew forward. Chapter 367. With Lu Ye's current speed, it took him less than an incense stick's worth of time to reach the center of the fiery lands. At the very center was a huge crater. The high temperature surging out of the crater caused space to distort. Lu Yi circled around the crater on his artifact and looked around. He could vaguely see a ball of raging flames at the bottom of the crater. The banshee was right. There was indeed a ball of fire here. However, this ball of fire was extraordinarily powerful. Even the earth seemed to have been burned through. No one had ever imagined that the center of the land of fire would be like this. The cultivators active in the Spirit Stream battlefield were only at the Spirit Stream realm. Even experts like Feng Yuechan and Li Baxian couldn't reach here safely. Even an overlord like the Banshee could only stay more than 100 miles away. If Lu Yi hadn't borrowed the power of his talent tree, he definitely wouldn't have been able to reach this place. His head felt a little dizzy, a sign that he had exhausted too much mental power. He had experienced this feeling many times in the 100 Formation Pagoda. He took out the last half bottle of soul-cleansing water and drank a drop. Only then did his mental exhaustion quickly fade. He couldn't delay any longer. The spirit vessel beneath his feet emitted cracking sounds. It seemed that even this spirit artifact couldn't withstand the corrosion of the high temperature. He urged the spirit vessel to fly down into the huge crater. He fell for several miles before reaching the bottom. Putting away the spirit vessel, Lu Yi looked at the ball of fire in front of him in amazement. This ball of fire was only the size of a wash basin. It was orange in color and gave off an extremely noble and holy feeling. Not only did it contain violent destructive power, but it also contained an indescribable vitality. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of fire it was and didn't have the heart to investigate it. He came here to borrow the talent tree to devour this flame. In his origin cavities, the talent tree clearly became more active. If he used the Insight Spirit rune, he could even see the talent tree's roots on the surface of Lu Ye's body constantly twisting and extending as if they wanted to pierce into the flame. There had never been a time when the talent tree gave Lu Yi such a desire. Lu Yi reached out and covered the orange flame. With the talent tree's roots covering the surface of his body, he didn't feel too much heat. Under his inner vision, the talent tree's roots were continuously absorbing orange-red energy into the tree. Lu Yi paid attention to the talent tree's leaves. He was very curious as to how many leaves would be burned if the talent tree devoured this ball of fire. A strange scene appeared. The orange-red power flowed through the tree, but it didn't burn the nearest leaf like it was supposed to. Instead, it crossed over many unburned leaves and reached the upper half of the tree. In an instant, a large number of leaves lit up. There were at least 100 or 200 leaves. Lu Yi was stunned. This was something that had never happened before. In the past, when he urged the talent tree to devour the earth core fire, the leaves on the talent tree would burn and only react to the next one. He had never experienced a reaction from 100 or 200 leaves at once. He wondered if it was because the fire was too strong. However, he soon realized that something was amiss. This unknown flame was indeed powerful. Otherwise, it would not have caused the environment within a radius of several thousand miles to become so intense. However, the leaves that reacted to it did not burn. Instead, they only lit up with patterns. As the talent tree continued to devour the power of the flames, the leaves became brighter and more dazzling. Finally, at a certain moment, the many leaves ignited with raging flames. Unlike the other leaves on the talent tree, the flames on these leaves were orange in color. They looked no different from the flames that were being devoured. Moreover, Lu Yi vaguely felt that the flames that gathered together seemed to be outlining a strange pattern. At first glance, it looked like a bird covered in flames was squatting on the talent tree. The swaying of the flames was mimicking the bird's movements. It looked very much like the vermilion bird of the four sacred beasts. It had a long tail and was extremely beautiful. Lu Yi couldn't figure out whether this was a coincidence or not. He was not in a hurry to find out what kind of spirit patterns were contained in the leaves. There were a lot of burning leaves this time. He could slowly investigate when he had the time. The orange-red flames from before had disappeared. They had all been devoured by the talent tree. Only then did Lu Yi relax. There was no way he could relax while urging the talent tree. It was not easy to persevere until now. Just as he was about to leave, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out above his head. A figure landed directly not far in front of him. The figure was slender and graceful. Her chest was bulging. Her scarlet eyes were like two floating will-o'-the-wisps in the dusky pit. Lu Ye's expression tensed up. He raised his hand and pressed down on the mountain pan saber. The pit underground was not small, but it was definitely not big. Moreover, it had been exposed to high temperatures all year round. The surrounding rock walls had turned into glass. It was extremely unwise to face an overlord-level existence in such an environment. With a heavy heart, he was only focused on devouring the flames. He had forgotten that without the suppression of the flames, the person in front of him could come over on his own. She had stopped more than 100 miles away because she could not bear the pressure of moving forward. Now that the flames were gone, the pressure was naturally gone too. Her scarlet eyes looked around. Where's the thing? She did not realize that Lu Yi had not promised her anything. I didn't see it. Lu Ye's fingers stroked the hilt of his saber. He glanced at the other party's slender neck. He thought about how difficult it would be to suddenly attack at this time. What was the probability of killing the other party with a single slash? In the end, he decided that if he really took the initiative to attack, it would not end well. Impossible. The demoness shook her head. I felt it before. Why don't you look for it yourself? The demoness did not say anything. She bent down and began to search. Her claws danced, and the crystallized ground immediately shattered. In the blink of an eye, dust flew into the air. I'll go first, Lu Yi said as he summoned his spirit boat. At the same time, he glanced at the demoness from the corner of his eye, guarding against her sudden attack. The result surprised Lu Yi. The other party was focused on searching for the flame that no longer existed. She did not pay attention to him at all. This demoness was strong, but there seemed to be something wrong with her intelligence. She probably would not have thought that there would be someone in this world who could devour such a powerful flame. Thinking back to their previous encounter, Lu Yi gradually confirmed this point. The battle between them was more like a demonic beast's instinct. It was not a true enmity. The spirit boat soared into the sky. The demoness did not seem to notice and continued to dig the ground. After digging for a long time, she still did not find anything. Only then did she realize that something was not right. She tilted her head and thought for a moment. Feathers grew on her arms, and in the blink of an eye, her arms turned into wings. With a flap of her wings, she soared into the sky and leaped out of the pit. Looking around, she seemed to be looking for traces of Lu Yi. But after such a long delay, how could she find Lu Yi? At this moment, Lu Yi maintained the wind spirit pattern on his spirit boat and flew as fast as lightning. The demoness' intelligence was questionable, but he could not expect her to be so stupid. It was not easy to escape from the tiger's den, so it was naturally more important to run away. After flying for more than half a day, Lu Ye's consumption of spiritual power was too severe. Only then did he land and find a place to rest in the forest. He then took out some array flags and arranged several interlocking array formations nearby. Only then did he feel much more at ease. In the past, he did not have the ability to set up formations. When he rested in the wild, he mostly needed Yi to guard the surroundings. But now, there was no need. he could be considered to have some attainments in formations. With the formation flags, simple warning, concealment, and protective formations could be easily set up. Thinking back to what he had encountered during this period of time, he was first chased by a group of cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge. Then, he was chased by a group of demon bees. After that, he was forced to run to this land of fire. He used the environment here to get rid of the demon bees. Then, he encountered an overlord-level existence here. His days were really thrilling. He took out a few spirit pills and swallowed them to calm his nerves. Activating the gluttony meal, his stomach buzzed. The medicinal effect of the spirit pills quickly dissolved, and the consumed spirit power was slowly replenished. Lu Yi first contacted Yi to make sure that they were fine. Then, he focused on the talent tree. This time, the talent tree lit up more than 100 leaves at once. It could be said that the harvest was huge. He did not know what kind of spirit patterns were contained in so many leaves. He was not in a hurry to check it out. It would not be too late to wait until he recovered. Lu Yi turned his attention to a storage bag. This storage bag was filled with good things that he had plundered from the huge beehive. Just the good grade honey alone was more than 1,000 caddies. He had tested the effect of this thing on his escape. It was especially effective for the recovery of physical strength and spirit power. Although it was not as good as the resting fruit wine, it was much faster than consuming spirit pills. It was just that it was not as convenient to eat as spirit pills every time. Perhaps there were some other effects. He could bring it back for second senior sister to study. Maybe there would be some unexpected discoveries. Other than the good grade honey, there was also the small half bowl of royal jelly. Lu Yi had not tasted what the effects of this thing were. He seriously suspected that the demon bees' relentless pursuit of him was not because he had stolen their honey. The biggest reason might be this half bowl of royal jelly. Such a huge beehive with so many demon bees could only produce this little bit of royal jelly. One could imagine how precious this thing was. If Lu Yi did not have the concealment spirit pattern, even a heaven level 9 ghost cultivator might not be able to succeed. Taking out an empty jade bottle, he took out a jade bottle full of royal jelly and drank it in one gulp. His mouth was full of sweetness, the consumed spirit power and physical strength were quickly recovered. The effect was much faster than the good grade honey. However, there did not seem to be anything special. Lu Yi silently sensed for a moment and soon found that something was wrong. An indescribable energy began to swim in his limbs and bones, causing his flesh and blood to squirm and become more compact. The flow of his qi and blood also became faster. Even the flow of his spirit power was faster. This royal jelly seemed to have a very obvious increase in the flow of his qi, blood, and spirit power. Chapter 368. Qi and blood and spiritual power were the two main directions of cultivation for spirit stream realm cultivators. Abundant qi and blood meant a strong physique. No matter which sect a cultivator belonged to, there was no harm in having a strong physique, not to mention spiritual power, which was the foundation of cultivation and fighting. The flow speed of these two was closely related to a cultivator's strength. There were two reasons why a cultivator's strength would increase greatly after switching to a heaven-grade cultivation method. First, it was because after switching to a heaven-grade cultivation method, a cultivator's control over their own spiritual power would increase greatly. Second, the speed at which spiritual power flowed within the body would also undergo a qualitative change. This royal jelly could increase the flow speed of qi and blood and spiritual power, which was equivalent to strengthening the physique of a body cultivator, and also increasing the strength of a cultivator. Take Lu Yi for example. After taking a bottle of royal jelly, although his cultivation did not change, the strength he could display was stronger than before. The only thing he didn't know was whether this effect was permanent or temporary. If it was temporary, then it wasn't worth much. There were some spirit pills that could achieve this effect, such as the Qi Eruption pill. This was a spirit pill that could temporarily increase a cultivator's strength. However, the after effects were very serious. If one wasn't careful, then one's spiritual cavities would be damaged. If it was permanent, then the value of this royal jelly was immeasurable. The effect of the royal jelly needed to be verified with time, so it was not clear for the time being. Lu Yi put his mind on the talent tree, looking at the area burning with orange flames. The more he looked at it, the more he felt it was like a bird squatting on a tree. Even if he changed his angle of view, there was not much change. This was very strange. Calming his mind, Lu Yi chose a leaf at random and focused, trying to see the patterns on the talent tree. A sudden change occurred. In his field of vision, the bird squatting on the talent tree seemed to come alive and suddenly flew down from the tree. The orange flames burned fiercely. The bird flapped its wings and dragged its long tail. The noble and holy figure filled Lu Ye's vision and even his mind in an instant. A clear and melodious cry sounded in his mind, loud and clear. Lu Yi did not make a sound and directly fainted. After the talent tree was activated in the mine of the Evil Moon Valley, Lu Yi encountered the same thing when he obtained his first spiritual tattoo. However, at that time, he had not yet been enlightened and was extremely weak, so his mind could not bear the complicated information contained in the leaf. However, as his cultivation level gradually increased, he no longer fainted while examining the talent tree's spirit inscriptions. Especially after he returned from the Immortal Essence City, his divine soul's power had increased greatly. When he examined the talent tree, the impact of the enormous amount of information on the leaves was like a gentle breeze to him. Lu Yi had never thought that there would come a day when he would be knocked unconscious by the impact of probing his talent tree. He didn't even have time to react. In the quiet and dark land of inheritance, in a pool of clear water, a beautiful body floated out of the water with a splash. The clear water slid down her smooth skin. She inhaled greedily, as if she had been reborn. Looking at the clear pool before him, he couldn't help but shudder as he recalled the torture and pain he had suffered over the past few days. She didn't know how she had persevered these days. The water in the pool was not so clear, but dark green. From the inheritance, she learned that this was a poisonous pool. If one didn't use a unique secret method to protect himself, even a spirit sea realm cultivator would lose a layer of skin if he fell into it. When she cultivated in the pool, she had several near-death experiences. Fortunately, she managed to survive in the end. Thinking back to the time when she chose to inherit this inheritance, she didn't know where she got the courage to do so. If she were to choose again at this time, she might not have the courage to do so. Because she had tried it, she knew the pain and suffering of inheriting this inheritance. It was double torture on the body and mind, but her consciousness was still very clear. Fortunately, it was all over. She lifted her foot and walked out of the 10,000 poison pool. The pool water slid down the exaggerated curves of her body. She activated her spiritual power to dry the water on her body and took out her clothes from the storage bag. She had a quiet and dignified temperament. Most of her clothes were white, but at this moment, she looked at the white dress in her hand and didn't know why she didn't like it very much. After thinking about it, she changed into a green dress. This time, she was satisfied. She dressed neatly and combed her hair. She raised her hand and tapped on her battlefield imprint, ready to share this joy. Suddenly, she remembered that this was the land of inheritance. It was isolated from the outside world and formed a space of its own. There was no way to communicate with the outside world. Thinking of that guy, the corner of her mouth curved into a smile. The next time he dared to casually grab her hand, she would let him know what it meant to regret being born into this world. She took out a large array jade pendant and activated the power of the jade pendant. The scene before her changed rapidly. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. She opened her arms to embrace the moonlight, feeling unprecedentedly comfortable and relaxed. Now, she didn't have to worry about not being able to keep up with his pace. On this day, the most terrifying medical cultivator in the 9 provinces came out of seclusion. His consciousness was muddled. Lu Yi didn't know where he was. He only felt that the environment he was in was extremely cramped and oppressive. He wanted to stretch his body, but there was something restricting him. Soon, he realized that he seemed to have fainted. But what was going on with this awakened consciousness? This was very strange. It was like a person in a dream could realize that the environment they were in was a dream. Lu Yi treated his current situation as a dream. He wanted to wake up, but he couldn't do it. His consciousness gradually became clearer, but the environment he was in didn't change at all. After an unknown period of time, a light crack sounded and a ray of light shone into the darkness. Looking up, a crack seemed to have appeared in the sky. Then, the crack widened and the world around him shattered. A small furry thing suddenly appeared, surrounded by shattered eggshells. Only then did Lu Yi realize that everything just now wasn't his own experience. Instead, he was watching the scene of a little chick breaking out of its shell from the perspective of a bystander. It didn't seem to be a little chick. That little thing was much bigger than a normal chick. Moreover, as soon as it was born, it swallowed all the shattered eggshells into its stomach. It ate until its belly was round and round. The little chick burped and spat out a ball of flame from its mouth. Time seemed to have sped up countless times. Scene after scene flashed past Lu Ye's vision. The little chick grew up. It was a bird covered in orange flames, dressed in colorful clothes, and had long feathers on its tail. The divine beast of the 4 symbols, the vermilion bird. Lu Ye's eyes followed the vermilion bird, witnessing its growth. He watched as it annihilated many powerful enemies, sweeping through everything before it. One day, this world would no longer be able to restrain its burning desire to seek the truth. It soared into the sky, flying towards outer space, entering the boundless starry sky to explore an even vaster world. After an unknown period of time, a ball of orange flames fell from the sky, burning through the sky and streaking across the horizon before landing on the ground. The burning flames burned through the ground and the entire world shook. Wherever the flames landed, everything within a radius of tens of thousands of miles was destroyed and turned into nothingness. Lu Yi suddenly opened his eyes. In an instant, an indescribable pain assaulted his mind. The feeling was so painful that his entire body curled up. His body trembled violently and his face was as white as a sheet. Thinking about the strength of his soul, even if it couldn't compare to a true lake stage cultivator, it shouldn't be too far off. But after receiving the information from the talent tree's leaf, he still had such a huge reaction. One could only imagine how enormous the information was. Trembling, he took out the soul-cleansing water. Without caring about how much he drank, he raised his head and drank a mouthful. Only then did the pain in his soul slowly recede. Exhausted, he lay on the ground. His thoughts were muddled and his eyes were lifeless. He fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, there was still some lingering fear in his heart. When he shook his head, his brain seemed to shake along with it. It had been a long time since he had experienced this feeling, but he didn't expect to experience pain that far exceeded any of the previous times. Lu Yi faintly suspected that if it weren't for the fact that his soul was strong enough, he would have lost his mind from the impact of the enormous amount of information. After sorting out the chaotic information in his mind, he finally understood why he had encountered such a situation. This time, the burning leaves didn't exist on their own. They were a whole. Because the information contained within was too enormous, each leaf carried a part of it. Lu Yi examined each leaf, which was equivalent to examining the whole thing. In other words, the information contained within 100 or 200 leaves had all surged into Lu Ye's mind at once. Even if his soul was now far beyond the spirit stream realm, there was still a limit to what it could withstand, which was why he had fainted. The various strange scenes he had seen while he was unconscious were not the information contained within the talent tree's leaves, but rather the information contained within the flames that the talent tree had devoured. That flame had come from the vermilion bird, one of the 4 sacred beasts. It was an incomplete true phoenix fire, and because too much time had passed, the incomplete true phoenix fire had weakened a lot. Therefore, the scenes that Lu Yi had seen while he was unconscious had been intermittent. He didn't know what had happened to the vermilion bird after it left its world. It had been beaten to the point that only a ball of true phoenix fire was left. In the end, it had drifted to the spirit stream battlefield and created the land of fire. It was rumored that phoenixes could undergo nirvana and be reborn. Lu Yi didn't know whether this rumor was true or not, but now, it seemed that it was most likely false. The true phoenix fire had been devoured by the talent tree, so how could it undergo nirvana? When the information contained within 1 or 200 leaves was gathered together, it was a spirit pattern, and at the same time, it was also a spell technique. Spirit patterns and spell techniques weren't very different in terms of origin, but the former had many types and a wide range of uses, while the latter focused on battle. If a comparison had to be made, then spell techniques were simplified spirit patterns. The new spirit pattern that Lu Yi had obtained was called Fire Phoenix. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.